share, that dividend that they got, as I said before, wasn't like a regular stock. It was just a dividend that entitled them to one share of an oil company that had an energy company that had fields in the Oro Grande in Texas. So just on that, to make sure that everybody has a full understanding of it, this is a very limited dividend share. It was never intended by the company to share, to trade, excuse me. But what happened was some nefarious players in the market decided that they could score, and they illegally registered this thing against the company's owners and against the directors. George Palikaris and John Berter were involved in this, and without going down a rabbit hole in the hows and whys on that and keep it as simple as possible, bad actors saw a way to make money by making it trade illegally. They used documentation that was dated back to 2012. And FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, allowed it to begin trading against the wishes of the company. Now, to put this in perspective, everybody's probably heard of a guy named Patrick Byrne, ran over stock. He's been very, very, very opinionated and vocal about reforming the stock market. He was a victim of the same thing. They tried to do this to his company at Overstock, and he beat him by creating a dividend share too. The players that were in that one were the same people that are the bad actors here in MMTLP. GTS Securities and Ari Rubenstein, company out of New York, big market maker, does trillions of dollars of business in the markets as a market maker, which is basically somebody who buys and sells securities to brokers and provides almost like a forum to trade these. He did it to Overstock. Byrne beat him, created a squeeze, and then he tried to do the same thing with MMTLP. And what's people need to be aware of is that from a regulatory standpoint, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority is supposedly subordinate to the Securities and Exchange Commission. So the people that are not versed in the stock market, like the average person, until I was really involved with this, I wasn't knowledgeable at all. You think you're going to put your money into an investment, it's safe and secure. But when you really get down and look at the way the U.S. stock market is run, it really is a cartel. It's really a shell game, and it's the corruption that is so deep in the MMTLP situation is so pervasive that you literally cannot look at any angle inside the MMTLP scandal and not come up with massive regulatory violations. For example, the FINRA is supposed to regulate the markets and keep them fair and honest and transparent. They don't. They really don't. And in the MMTLP scandal, George Palikaris was the CEO of Meta Materials, which was one of the companies in the reverse merger. And he actually challenged a director, an officer of FINRA, to actually tell him who was getting his stock trading without his permission. And the woman's name is Patricia Casamates, and she was talking to the chief financial officer for Meta Materials, a guy named Ken Rice, and she would not disclose that to him. So you have the company gets trading, not the company, the dividend share gets trading illegally with falsified, backdated information from 2012, and they won't even tell the company who did it. And then, I mean, like I said, I could go down a rabbit hole here and get very, very, very deep into the rabbit hole to the point that I can't even see daylight behind me. But the bottom line is there are so many different angles in MMTLP that are literally off the rails in terms of you expect fair markets, you expect, America, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet, and we're anything but that in the market.
So if people that own shares in this MMTLP, they were kind of expecting, what was the outcome that they were expecting?
Well, they were expecting that they were going to first have two options. One was that they're going to do a one-for-one share transition where on December 12th, people that had this dividend were going to be able to swap it out into NextBridge Hydrocarbons as a one-for-one swap. They'd exchange their MMTLP dividend for a share in a private company, NextBridge Hydrocarbons, which basically took over their Grand oil fields. But what happened was there was a U3 trade halt, which was done under probably the most nefarious circumstances seen in U.S. trading history. FINRA altered legal documents dealing with the company, created confusion on two dates on December 6th and December 8th against their own rules, by the way, which is common. And they basically put the investors in MMTLP in a position where 2 days before the company was supposed to go private and their shares were supposed to transfer, they unilaterally decided that there was quote unquote an extraordinary event, two dates in December, which they've never defined. They've never explained it. And they shut down the trading. They literally took the investment that the people had made in this dividend, and they took it. And there's been no recourse since then. We're almost 2 years down the road from that halt, and they haven't answered any questions. Something on the order of 500, 600 FOIA requests went to the SEC and FINRA from people that owned MMTLP saying, what happened here? And what's interesting is on December 5th, a FINRA officer named Sam Drady, who's the vice president of their fraud division, comes out with an email that people in the MMTLP community got a copy of, where he said, there is fraud here that we have been watching for a while. And he pulled something called the blue sheets. The blue sheets are infamous. What they are is basically, it's a record of all the long shares sold in a company, meaning you want to hold a share long term, or people who have shorted it, and other minutia. But the bottom line is it tells the tale of that ticker. Where are all the positions in it? He pulled them and immediately went to other higher officers. That was on December 5th. Then on December 8th, after closing, they shut it down.
Wow. And what happened to people that invested into this? I mean, did they lose their money completely?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But that's not the only thing that was happening here. This was not happening in a vacuum with them. The whole reason this thing was stopped was because major players, major brokerages like Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Robinhood, E-Trade oversold their positions. And oversold a position means that basically you're selling more shares than you actually have. And that is why the FINRA people and the brokerages are fighting tooth and nail to stop the lawsuit in Vermont and other ones, because they don't want the blue sheets going public. So one of the things I did in my case was I motioned for expedited limited discovery under the federal rules to basically ask for those blue sheets, not to go to me, but to go to the federal judge. So the judge could look at them. Potentially, my suggestion would be down the line, if that was granted, to have somebody from the Southern District of New York, U.S. Attorney's Office, is well-versed in fraud, sit in the judge's chamber as a federale and take a look at him and see where it all lays. But the bottom line is the fraud was absolutely off the rails. Now, what's interesting, let me back up a second. What was taking shape in those last few days of trading was people that had shorted the stock should have been in a position and should have known the trading to stop. Now remember, this ticker was going to vanish and become a one-for-one share of a private company. This is the entire U.S. stock market, a microcosm drilled down to its lowest molecular level. They saw a short squeeze taking place. People had shorted the stock, meaning they had sold it before they had even bought it. And literally, that's what a short is. You sell something you don't own in return for paying it later. It's not as complicated as you might think it is, and it's common. But what happens is, in our market, we have something called naked shorting, naked synthetics. That's where a market maker can literally use a rule from the SEC called they call it Rule 203. It's a FINRA rule, excuse me, and the Securities Exchange Commission has oversight of FINRA. But the bottom line is, they are able to create as many fake shares as they want, all in return for a promise to FINRA. So a promise isn't worth anything. But the bottom line is, these people are allowed to print short shares that can destabilize and destroy the value of a company. But at the end, they had to have known that they were going to have to buy them at some point. And that's what a short squeeze is. That's how Patrick Byrne with Overstock had $120 share value, went from $30 to $120 in about a month. When MMTLP looked like it was skyrocketing, and we've literally got screenshots showing the value of this thing was literally going to the moon. It wasn't shut down because there was fraud committed by any small investors. It wasn't shut down to protect retail investors. The U3 halt in MMTLP was done because major market makers and major players in the market knew that they were going to have their rear ends handed to them by the retail investors who only bought it to go long, to go into NextBridge, and everybody else that were bad operators in the U.S. market were shorting it to destroy the value of it.
Wow.
And they had to pay the piper on December 9th through 12th by a corporate action that had been filed. Like the corporate action was out there, and a corporate action is basically a statement from a company saying, we are going to do this on a certain day. It had to go to FINRA for approval. But for the first time in something like 1,040 corporate actions, FINRA altered the company's own S1, its own corporate action that it filed. In addition, it was the first time ever in FINRA history where a ticker was actually not just canceled, but it was canceled. They changed it to deleted. Nobody had ever seen that before. So the intrigue around MMTLP literally, it's unmatched any place in U.S. trading history. And I think,
So I do got a quick question for you. The FINRA, do they have any people that are, they have to answer to, or they're their own entity and they don't have to answer to anybody? Because I was told
yeah,
that they're a private firm and there's no overhead, and I mean, so
no, a FINRA,
there's no oversight.
no, well, technically, under the Securities Exchange Act, the Securities Exchange Commission is a executive branch office. So it's got sworn officers. They're accountable to the Congress or accountable to the president, but they're an executive branch agency. They're U.S. officers. They're U.S. officials. FINRA is not. FINRA is a self-regulatory organization. It's a Delaware corporation, and it's a nonprofit, but from the amount of money they've got made in investments as a nonprofit, I challenge that. But the bottom line is they're a self-regulatory organization. And one of the things I've challenged in my lawsuit is that they are literally in violation of the U.S. Constitution. The Appointments Clause says you can't exercise the authority of the U.S. Constitution unless you're an officer of the United States. FINRA is not. The officers in FINRA are not sworn officers. They're not appointed by the president, and they're not controlled by the Congress financially. So there's two strikes against them constitutionally. Let's throw a third strike in. As a self-regulatory organization, their existence violates the non-delegation clause in the U.S. Constitution, and they also violate the separation of powers. And the reason I've raised these as a constitutional issue has been a bunch of Supreme Court cases recently, Loper Bright Enterprises versus National Marine Fisheries, West Virginia versus EPA, Biden versus Nebraska, and a more recent case that got to the DC Circuit called Alpine Securities. Now, these are all important because it's showing that the Supreme Court is actually rolling back the nanny state, the administrative state, and they're actually looking at the older clauses to say, no, you really can't do that. Now, as a point of personal interest, one of the boats that got mentioned in Loper case, the Loper Bright Enterprises cases, which reined in the National Marine Fisheries Service, but with much broader implications towards other federal agencies. I was actually crewman on one of those fishing boats that was mentioned in that case.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've got kind of like a personal connection to it. But the bottom line, though, is the Supreme Court's been paving the road down, bringing in and reining in the administrative state. So FINRA operates completely outside any grant of authority under the U.S. Constitution. They claim immunity, but we're challenging that. I'm actually challenging their right to even exist because, to me, they're the new British. The Declaration of Independence in our Constitution takes great pains to say, we have had our economic and our liberty interests curtailed by officers appointed by the Crown. I mean, it's in the Declaration. They eat out the substance of the people. It's in the Declaration of Independence. So everything that we're seeing in the regulatory state in the United States is where it can be perceived as acting outside the brand of authority by the Constitution. It needs to be challenged. Now, I'm not saying all regulations are bad. As a matter of fact, in a couple of minutes, I'll make the case to show where regulations were good, but only if they're enforced in a constitutional and fair and impartial way. I can get into that in a moment. But the bottom line is FINRA is illegal. They're claiming immunity. I'm trying to get a federal judge here in Vermont to say, no, no, under Loper, under Biden, under West Virginia, you're illegal. The Appointments Clause specifically says you've got to be an officer of the United States, and you're not.
Wow. So what is the impact that this has done to investors going forward? Because this is something you wanted to educate everyone related to the market. Thank you.
Well, for the average investor, a while ago when I first started getting into investing, a very wise woman that I know told me, she says, you know what a 401k is, Scott? I went, what? So 401k is a low interest loan to a hedge fund, meaning most of the market is structured in such a way that the apex predators are always going to make out. Remember the 2008 financial crash? They
Yes.
spent, they spent
Great
a ton.
recession that
Yeah, right.
they did, they
Yeah.
created.
Bear Stearns goes down, Lehman Brothers goes down. What do we have next? We have a $700 billion bailout from the US government. It doesn't bail out the little guy. It bails out the apex predators who overspent, overborrowed, overdid everything. And we had a basic dumpster fire economically. And the way we solved the problem was to reward the incompetent and the people that butchered the market by giving them a $700 billion bailout. So anyway, you can actually think back to 1995, if you can remember that. 1995, the Congress decided that we needed less regulation in the market. So they passed something called the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act. What that effectively did was it closed the door to citizens suing brokerages and companies for fraud. Then later on, they made sure that the RICO Act, the Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organization Act, couldn't apply to securities fraud. So under RICO, civil, you can get 3 times your damages. So what you did was what our Congress did, and the PSLRA, of one of the few things that Bill Clinton did that was good as a president, he opposed that for what it was going to do to the markets. And he saw that, and a bunch of Republicans and Democrats all saw the same problem. You're closing the door to people getting into court to address grievances. So they started shutting off the courts from people. Then they took away RICO. So it's interesting. You've got this real tension between criminal RICO, which gets prosecuted by the U.S. government, and you have civil RICO, which is a civil case where people have been wronged by an organized criminal activity. They can sue. So there's been a constriction on your rights to sue to protect your own interests, but the federal government now has extended RICO to go after stuff that it was never intended to do. And the courts have not reined that in to this point, but it's kind of an interesting dichotomy there. Anyway, when you go back to 1995 and you look at that, they started shutting the door off, so people had to have special pleading requirements. In order, you had to basically get inside a stockbroker's head who screwed you and say, hey, we did this wrong, we did that wrong, we've seen this, and you have to document it. Then the court put in another requirement, something called Sinter, which is you have to get inside the guy's head again and say that he acted in a criminal state, criminal mindset. Now, how are you going to plead that? So they started closing off the doors. But what's interesting is immediately after 1995, they shut the door to the public. Wall Street went wild. In 1998, they started doing alternative trading systems called dark pools, where big players could hide their trades, and accountability just started hemorrhaging right there. You had a bleed out in corporate accountability right there. And it was literally not a million cuts. They just went right for the throat and said, we're going to set up our own alternative trading systems where we can bury trades so there can't be fair price discovery. Small investors can't see what's going on in these dark pools, and they can literally do whatever they want in them. They can shovel off trades. They can do spoofing of trades. They can do a whole bunch of different things, which basically doesn't allow an average investor to figure out what a true price is. So to get back to your original question, right now in the market, there is literally so many factors that are angled towards the small investor that you really have to tread very carefully. And you have to be a very astute investor. But there's a case going on right now in Georgia where the supreme apex predator in the U.S. market is Citadel Securities, run by a guy named Ken Griffin, where they're trying to basically destroy a company that was actually working on cures for cancer. And this has been done over and over again. So the company's in court against them in Georgia, and the judge there has actually been somewhat, I'd say, fair, and is basically going to allow some discovery, I guess, against Citadel to find out if they really were spoofing. But that's going to be a groundbreaker. But the short answer, though, is this: the U.S. markets are rigged, and it's not even a shell game anymore because they're telling you to your face that it's rigged. And let me explain how that happens. FINRA has a rule. They have a couple rules which are absolutely devastating to the U.S. economy. I call it, I mean, literally, FINRA is FINRA and enabled by the SEC, a compliant SEC. It's grand theft U.S. economy. So they have a rule called 4560, which says it's reporting of short shares. So explain again just a little bit. Short shares, or short selling something, is you're selling something you don't even own with a promise that you're going to get it later. And you have to do a locate on that thing so it's there. But what FINRA does is they allow, by that rule, they allow the massive companies on Wall Street, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, the Citadels, Two Sigma, Jane Street, Virtue, all the apex predators get to take their short positions, transfer them to foreign affiliates, and then they go off the books here. So literally, it's money laundering. And one of the things they pointed out in the lawsuit that we have here is FINRA is allowing this. FINRA is a private organization. It's violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It's violating the Patriots Act, and it's also violating, excuse me, let me see, let me see, the Patriot Act, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, oh, and the Bank Secrecy Act. So you have the three major anti-money laundering laws in the United States at the stratospheric level that have overwatch over the economy, but somehow FINRA has gotten a pass to allow these big companies to take their offshore positions, take their positions offshore and shorting. It just doesn't make any sense. So basically, you're allowing for a money laundering operation to take place against the entire U.S. economy. Let's not even get into the fact that when you have that much exposure in foreign countries, that it allows for nefarious state actors like China to get involved in some of these things, potentially even here to start trading in things or push money around in a way where they can actually set up short positions. I mean, you know, again, that's another rabbit hole you go down. But the Chinese have long ago, going back to 1999, the Chinese had a book, which was a doctrinal book about how you defeat the United States. It's called War Without Limits. And the colonels that wrote those books back in 1999, that book in 99, they're generals now. And it basically talks about economic warfare by destroying the U.S. stock market and our industries. So what better way to destroy our market by nefarious actions like that, or at least setting up the circumstances where their Communist Party and their intelligence services could manipulate the U.S. market.
So right now, those that are watching live and those that are going to be watching the rerun, we now open it up to members that have joined the town hall. They could be anywhere in the country: Alaska, Hawaii, California, New York, Rhode Island, doesn't matter. They're going to raise their hands. There's going to be a queue of people that want to engage with Scott directly. We have a first question coming in from California. And Ken, please make sure it's a question, and we're going to unmute Ken. Go ahead, Ken. Thank you so much.
Scott, before the question, please let me tell you, I'm also the biggest victim being a whistleblower in Netflix stock in this country, which is now a $100 billion loot scam by Obama gang and James Comey and everybody, okay? My case is on the YouTube. Anybody can go and pull out from Department of Justice. They will blank everything out. Your Financial Services Committee, Jeb Hansling and Maxine Waters are fully involved in that. Jeb Hansling is at UBS Securities after leaving the Financial Services Committee. And Scott is precisely right. But please, I'm not going to talk about a question. 1913, your Federal Reserve Fraud Act. Then go to 1995, what he said. We got to 2000.com scam. Glass-Steagall Act was taken down by Bill Clinton. Then we went to 2008. We couldn't do 2008 without creating FINRA. It used to be called NASD before that. That was privatized. Means the entire profits in the US loot scam was privatized to the private equity. So the American people becomes debt slaves and the nation gets busted. And that has been achieved since 2008 because every attorney general in the country was forced to sign on the document that nobody can sue for the mortgage scam. And everything was handed to BlackRock, Larry Fink. And Larry Fink has been brought in by Donald Trump and merged US Treasury and the Federal Reserve with the Aladdin software. Now you have a total control of the fraud stock market of the US in the hands of three funds, BlackRock. Everybody's talking about the rest, okay? The three. 88% of your SP index is controlled by this criminal organization. And you talk about derivatives, dark pools, your nation is gone. And Trump, with this Truth social media, Damon Nunes used to be on the intelligence committee. With
Ken, can you just tell us the question, please?
No, please, this is a wrap up for Scott, okay? Please, question is not the issue. I know everything. Now, finally, we have Damon Nunes, who was on the intelligence committee with Dianne Feinstein, went with Donald Trump, started the Truth social media, he's a CEO. They merged through a shell company, the same scam that we are witnessing on Wall Street through every criminal syndicate. And Trump is doing the same shit. Now he's a Bitcoin champion that he's going to give you a crypto scam in this country. So both parties, Obama, Clinton, Bush gang, Trump, everybody's part of the two wings of the same summing shit. This nation is gone. You can fight in your courts. I fought 5 years in house arrest. 13 years couldn't get out of Eastern District of California. FBI director threatened to kill me on Twitter, shown to the judges. So you guys can keep debating this, go to the courts, nothing is going to come out because every rule was rigged against the American people. There are 40 million shares in Netflix. When I said it, 300 million shares traded in a single day. Where that came from? Dot pools. You know, all this nonsense we are dealing. Your country is gone. Please.
So Scott, what's your reaction to Ken? Ken's basically saying you're gonna fight, and it's gonna end up nowhere because it's so corrupt. What's your reaction to that? Thank you, Ken, for that long-winded question.
No, I'll go full Churchill on that question. You never give up. You never stop fighting. The end. When you give up, when you decide you can't do anything, you've lost. I haven't lost. The MMTLP people haven't lost. We're going full Churchill. We're in this to the end, and like literally, there's no quit in this crew. These guys have been, the MMTLP community has had 2 years roughly of abuse and lies, and they've been kicked away from Congress. We've been lied to by congressmen and senators. We've seen FINRA act irregularly. We've seen the SEC not take any action. We know what the proof is. People are continuing to dig and not giving up. So the MMTLP community is full Churchill, and I disagree with them.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we're going to have a question from Texas. Doug, Texas, from the Lone Star State. Go for it. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't pretend that I know anything about this. I've just a question is what can Trump do to change everything, or what can we do to help move the needle forward? Let's just say, because I'm 100% with you. We don't give up. We don't surrender. We're never giving up our country. So tell me what we can do, and what do you think Trump or whomever might get in charge could do to stave this?
Well, on the individual level, pay attention to the markets, get educated. Being educated is the most important thing, because if you're not educated, you're not going to be able to tell when they're actually lying to you and what the fraud is. So people have got to get educated exactly how our stock market works or doesn't work. In terms of what we can do in the political realm, Donald Trump gets elected president. I believe he's going to have to replace, he's already said he's going to replace Gary Gensler. I don't believe going to a digital coin-based or digital economy or a digital currency is anybody's best interest. As a matter of fact, I think that's the worst thing could possibly happen, because that's going to allow for social credit scoring and all the other bad things we're seeing in China and in Europe, and it's just ridiculous. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we get the right people in the right positions in the SEC. I think if Donald Trump becomes elected president, he needs to go to all the regulatory agencies that have been weaponized against the American people. Like, I don't think anybody can make a cohesive argument that the U.S. Department of Justice is not an extension of the Democrat Party right now. I mean, I'm getting far afield of MMTLP, I know, but the politics there are interesting. DOJ has not done anything on our behalf, and it just seems like if they're not beholden to the Democrats, they're going to protect the money people. Trump gets in, becomes president again. He needs to do a decapitation strike on the regulatory agencies. My counsel would be, if I ever had his ear, would be anybody above a GS-15 level working in a regulatory agency has to go bye-bye. The end. That's where you start. You got to clean house. There's no Lyndon Johnson, when he was president, he had a famous quote where he said, "You can't reform a U.S. government agency. You can only downsize it or create another one." So potentially, because our markets are so crooked, there's a thing on the SEC, there's a form that the SEC, and I think FINRA has it, but I mean, I'm trying to get rid of FINRA, as most of the MMTL people are, start your own stock market. Look what's going on. Seriously, Korea has wiped out short selling. The Chinese have gone after short selling. Thailand, go to Europe and see what they're doing on that. They're saying that naked shorting in Korea is going to get you a life prison sentence because they know it's economic destabilizing.
It creates havoc on the publicly trading stocks too. I mean, we know what companies fell out from that. So
right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's you have to have reform, but the question is, if all of us are in the same boat together, does it make more sense for us to say, hey, look, we're going to reform you guys? No, they're entrenched. But what we can do is use asymmetric warfare against them economically, which is we'll start our own stock exchange, base it in Texas. There's a guy, a little known scientist kind of making a name for himself named Elon Musk. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. But anyways, slide a Form 1 in front of him and say, Elon, start your own market, no shorting. And again, here's something that's interesting. I'm friendly with a hedge fund guy in Manhattan, very good man. But for lack of a better term, I call his hedge fund and a bunch of hedge funds like his, I call them the White Knight hedge funds. I asked them once, I said, he was investing in it. Literally, I had a business interest and we're talking about him investing in it. And I said, why aren't you allowed? You never invest in the stock market. You never invest in the US stock market. Why not? He goes, man, by charter, I can't. And I was like, what do you mean by charter? He goes, no, the founding members of this firm said you will not invest in the US stock market because it's so crooked. And we're not going to go put money into small startup companies just to watch people come in and short them to death and take all the intellectual property and destroy them. We can't run that risk. So all they do is private equity. All they do is loans. But literally, they are cheering on the MMTLP people because they know if we can get a strike in, knock down FINRA, get clean regulations, and take some of the apex predators out along the way and expose all the naked shorting, they're with us. Because think of all the US money that's on the sidelines now that doesn't even go into the market because the people are terrified of getting wiped out. Look at the derivatives bubble we have. None of this stuff is happening in a vacuum. $28 trillion in derivative exposure in the US economy right now on one spot.
Now we have more members with questions, but I'm gonna throw a wrench in the middle of this. I'm hearing that the dollar value is tanking. I'm hearing that there's a lot of things that are overstimulated. Is there a big market correction coming? And I mean, the guy you talked about, the 2008 Great Recession. Let's look at Big Short. The Big Short guy is shorting the whole market right now.
Right. No, Michael Burry, he was spot on in 08. He called it. Literally, I can't. I'll quickly estimate right now my capacity to look into my crystal ball versus Burry being in the markets for 30 years and me being almost a newcomer to it with only 2 or 3 years experience. I'll defer to Burry, but what I will say is that we are in a perfect storm of economic crisis in this country. We have unlimited naked shorting going on. The proceeds are getting hidden. We've shut down basically most of the productive stuff that we have done industrially has been like obliterated. We're dependent for the first time ever on food imports into this country.
Wow.
I mean, from a staggering standpoint, once you're food dependent, now you got problems. So I know that doesn't sound like it's counterintuitive. How does that affect the market? But once you don't have food security, you're really sliding down the slope to becoming a third world nation.
Well, I will say this, those that are in the town hall, please, at the bottom, there's a reaction, and then you hit raise hand. That'll get you into the queue, or you could just type your question or, hey, I want to raise my hand. I can't see everyone because I'm hosting, so it helps me out. Wendy, Oklahoma is up next, and then we have Leslie right after her in Oklahoma. Go ahead, Wendy, you're up.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for coming tonight and explain this to us. I'm a total novice when it comes to the stock market. The question I have, or basically almost a total novice, people get in, they trade, and they don't know what they're doing sometimes. My question is on FINRA. You said that this is a private company that somehow had authority delegated to them. Was that through the SEC?
Yeah. There was 2 markets regulators that got fused in 2008 by an act of Congress. So FINRA came out of the National Securities Dealer Association, I believe, NASD, and another securities operation. So they took over in, I think it was 2008. That's where they're formed. So literally, they are a private organization. They're what they call a self-regulatory organization. And for years, they've been able to claim absolute immunity in courts. Nobody can go after them for misdeeds. And the court rulings, to really terrify you, when you read the cases, and like I've had to read a lot of cases involving FINRA at the district court level, U.S. district courts and courts of appeals, and the deference the courts have shown, even when FINRA officials have been caught in fraud, caught market manipulation, unseemly, unsavory things, they've been able to hide behind immunity because basically the courts have ruled might makes right. They have immunity. We're not going to do anything to them. So even when they literally get involved in destroying companies by literally not regulating properly, not doing their duties, staying outside staying literally to a point where, like in the MMTLP scandal, they altered documents. They literally altered a company's corporate statement before it went and ceased trading. And the end result was they devastated 65,000 investors in MMTLP, and they got away with it to this point. So literally, you have a constitutional issue. I brought that up with Ashley earlier, but the constitutional issue here isn't so much about just FINRA. What should be terrifying beyond FINRA, and I'm going to answer your question in a way which probably will scare you even more, is that in one of the briefs that I filed to try and make sure they preserved evidence in my case, in the Fifth Circuit down in Texas, there was a case called the Daily Wire versus the U.S. Department of State. And what happened in this case was horrifying. The Daily Wire people found that the U.S. Department of State was paying foreign individuals to target American press, media personalities, and public forums, almost like what we're hearing right now. They literally were paying people overseas to create systems to target Americans at home. So not only is FINRA destroying, the U.S. markets by not regulating properly and acting as a law unto themselves, you literally have a case that's in a court right now in the United States where foreign operators are targeting Americans with American money paid for our Department of State. Think about that. That's terrifying. So everything that we're doing in the MMTLP community isn't just about us. We're trying to fix the markets, but there's a broader picture here too, which is our government really our own anymore? I mean, we're broadening the battlefield because we have to of necessity. But the bottom line is every time we turn around, it almost seems like the imperial overreach of the U.S. government against the U.S. Constitution and the rights of our own people. I mean, I could literally run a litany of issues right now that are affecting Americans, and none of them are breaking the right way.
So we have the next question from Oklahoma is Leslie, and then on deck is an alias James Bond. Go ahead, Leslie. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, thank you so much for being on the show. I actually was a financial director of finance for a financial firm not too long ago, and we worked with Asset Mark and a few other mutual, type of companies. I understand Vanguard is one of those companies that was investing in the MMTLP. Are there others besides that?
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. One of the reasons that I was a client of Schwab's, but the damning paper trail leads right to Schwab. Schwab was in on getting MMTLP trading right from the get-go, and literally before MMTLP was even designated as a ticker to trade in October, it showed up in an account in July of 2021, 2 months before his trading. It showed up in a Schwab, an index fund. Schwab was in on it right from the get-go, right up to the eyeballs. So, I mean, to answer your question, it's not just Schwab too. And literally, NextBridge Hydrocarbons is a private company, and from stuff that I saw today, Vanguard is showing NextBridge in their account, and it's not even a publicly traded company. I mean, the madness here is absolutely out of control in terms of market regulations, and it's not just that Schwab was bad in this. The other actors that were bad in this thing too, overselling it. But the issue here's an interesting thing. MMTLP was halted on a U3 halt. What happens if, and this is a question for you, you're involved in finance, but I mean, I'll put it out there rhetorically. Let's say, for example, the judge rules in our favor, and I get over the current motions that we have for arbitration to stick me in arbitration. I can talk about that in a minute. But let's say I get through the initial motions to dismiss and it survives, and the judge says, I want to see the blue sheets. So FINRA has a rule for U3 for doing trade halts. The SEC has its own rule, 12K, which is suspensions. So what happens if the same day that the judge orders the blue sheets, let's assume, everything goes right for us. I mean, rosy scenario, judge gets the blue sheets. Blue sheets say Schwab's completely oversold and potentially oversold to a point where it's insolvent, that if it had to cover its oversold positions, what happens then? So be careful what you ask for. You might just get it. What happens if then we discover all this stuff? Donald Trump's president, we have a new SEC director, and the SEC director says, okay, anybody who is oversold in the MMTLP play, you can't cover your shares. I'm going to do a 12K trade suspension on all you brokerages. So you boomerang it back at them. And I think that's just one option that could happen. That's not even the nuclear option. The nuclear option for the MMTLP people is using a writ of mandamus, which is very, very, very rarely given in the United States, but it compels an officer to do his duty. So in our end state, once we exhaust everything, once we've exhausted every recourse in Congress and in the courts and administratively, then we go for a writ of mandamus at a U.S. District Court, and we say, we're going to compel you to tell the SEC director that he's got to give us 2 days of trading back in MMTLP. You cut us off for 2 days. There's no good grounds for what you did it. It's the nuclear option. The nuclear option is 2 days of trading and let it fly. How many shares do you have to cover? Literally the numbers in the MMTLP situation. I mean, we're talking Carl Sagan numbers worth of shorts, shares oversold. I mean, truly Carl Sagan, celestial numbers. So the SEC director is going to be caught between the Scylla and the Charybdis, the traditional rock and a hard place, which is, do I make the call to shut those guys down? Potentially. What do I do for the markets? I mean, literally, there are no good options at this point, except for taking care of the MMTLP investors, fixing the markets, shutting down FINRA, having some rules and regulations in place that actually set up fair markets. And if they won't do it, set up our own market. Set it all up, start from scratch. Look, you guys, hey, look, if you guys want to play that game, that's fine. If you set up another stock market and properly funded it and financed it, and a couple provisos from the start, I think you'd see a migration of legitimately good companies to get away from NASDAQ and get away from the New York Stock Exchange and go to a new stock market where there wasn't predatory shorting, there wasn't all these rules and regs to favor the insiders, et cetera, et cetera. Get back to where the markets could possibly be. Maybe it's a pipe dream, but to put it out there, at least get it in the discussion that maybe that's what the solution is.
Perfect. We have a question from alias James Bond. Go ahead, James Bond, with your question to Scott. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, thanks for all you do. This isn't really a question. It's just to make this crystal clear to everyone here. I'm a MMTLP shareholder. I put a lot of money into it. I was told I had until the 12th to sell. On the 12th, it was going to be, if I did not sell, I would have got private equity shares in an exploratory oil company. All right, so I had the 12th to sell. I had a lot of money in it. Now picture you're all excited about that. Is it going to go up? Whatever it's going to do. I have till the 12th stated by the SEC. It was planned out in legal documents. And then you wake up on the 9th and all your stuff's frozen. That's been my life for 2 years.
Right. Well, that's been the life for a lot of people for the last couple of years. See, one of the things that, in addition to the regulatory issues I talked about earlier with, Congress passing laws to protect the investors and preventing suits and wiping out RICO, in addition to that, you've got investors like MMTLP investors. When you have a problem with the stock market, when you have a problem with a brokerage, you're already in the iron triangle. So most brokerage agreements say you have to go to arbitration, and 99% of the time you end up in arbitration. It's not fair. There's no discovery. You can't access the broker's documents. It's just basically, I won't say it's a kangaroo court, but it's manifestly weaker for the retail small guy than if you'd gone into court. That's one side of the triangle. The other side of the triangle is the special pleading requirements to plead securities fraud. So you've got to have that higher bar yet again. And then in addition to that, you've got that no RICO ability to get 3 times damages. So you're in the triangle. So you start out with that premise that you're already hamstrung with any efforts to try and resolve your damages because they've literally put all these roadblocks in front of you to actual recovery. That has to change.
We have a go back from Oklahoma. Wendy, go ahead. 30 seconds, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. He muted me before I could ask you. When is part of your lawsuit in the Supreme Court going to be whether or not the SEC unlawfully delegated their authority? I think I heard you say to a private corporation, because if so, I work in election integrity. We have issues with the legislatures delegating authority regarding elections. And how broad do you think this decision is going to be when it comes down?
Well, I'm not in the Supreme Court yet. I'm only at the district court level, but I've raised all the constitutional issues regarding FINRA, its immunity and its existence. So I've challenged that, but I'm only at the district court level. So I've got to, like I said, I've got to survive all these motions to dismiss and get out of arbitration, which I think I've got a good argument to do that. Now, should I lose at the district court level, I go to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and if I lose there, I go to the Supremes. But in terms of where we would stand if we got to the Supremes by losing at the two lower levels, Supreme Court Justice Alito, in a decision in 2023, said he had no doubts whatsoever that his exact quote was, "There's not even a fig leaf of constitutionality for FINRA to exist." So FINRA was created by an act of Congress to merge two others, put them under the SEC. But these recent Supreme Court decisions clearly say, as a self-regulatory organization, in the Alpine case, where the district court judge said, "We got a constitutional issue here." So I took, literally, I took the bait from those decisions, and at the district court level, I've raised the issues. I've preserved the record to the best I can. And should we lose at this level, we go to the Second Circuit, and then we go hopefully onward and upward and get to the Supremes and get a favorable decision. But I think Judge Alito, Supreme Court Justice Alito, is already looking at this thing and saying, no way. No way is this is not constitutionally acceptable at all. So to answer your question, how would that apply in the broader questions on election integrity? I don't know. I'll plead ignorance because I'm not familiar with all the election rules. So I'll plead ignorance. But what I will say is that from a standpoint of deregulating self-regulatory organizations, if there's any private element that may be contracted to handle elections, for example, an election commission is going to pay Dominion to come in here and run our elections and run the computers, then I think it'd have an effect, if it's at that level. But I mean, again, I'm out on the skinny branches from an intellectual and a knowledge base on that, and I freely admit it.
Okay, so we got a couple of questions coming in. Scott, real quick, for a timeline, how much time can we have with you tonight? Just curious.
Oh, I'm fine. I can keep going.
Okay. So I will have to transition to another place after these two questions, but we'll continue. Megeso, Hawaii. We got a question from Hawaii related to law, and because he runs Red America First corruption pillar, we are going to start calling out these corrupt politicians or government officials by name with receipts. And Megeso's running that department. He's got a question related to some of these laws. Go ahead, Megeso, and thank you so much.
I was just wondering if the state action doctrine for federal constitutional claims would apply here, where people would.
Repeat the question. You're broken up for a second.
Does the state action doctrine for federal claims, constitutional claims, does that apply in your case?
I don't think so. No. Well, state action doctrine, you mean in the sense that a private company is using its authority illegally under the Constitution? I think that's that's non-delegation. Yeah, it does apply. If that's what you're saying, non-delegation, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've used that extensively in one of my briefs. I'm going to use it again, and I think that's the thing that has to be brought home, that there's no constitutionally well-grounded foundation to have a private organization executing the laws of the United States, period.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have a question coming in from West Virginia. Doug, thank you so much. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, Scott, this is Copy and Paste. I'd like to say thanks for coming on tonight. You're doing a really good job. And what do you feel about MBH possibly trading on blockchain?
I haven't given it much thought, but I don't know how they're going to get to trade with all the MMTLP people still sitting on the outside of the fence with their QSIPs. So to the people that are not familiar with it, like I have not transferred any of my shares at all into a depository, which would allow ownership of the MBH. I still got QSIPs in my Schwab account. So a QSIP is just a number that designates the shares that you have by a particular number sequence. So I don't know how that's going to happen because the MMTLP people that are on the outside of the fence on NextBridge Hydrocarbons who haven't got in yet, there's two issues which prevent them from getting in there. Number one, I believe that the kitty, so to speak, of shares for NBH is already filled. So anybody that's outside the fence can't get in because all the major brokerages oversold everything. Now, my estimate is that there's 165 million share float in MMTLP on the dividend, and that 165 million shares is probably been oversold by at least 500 or 600 million shares. So you're never going to have any kind of fair accounting of it until we actually see how many shares were actually sold. I mean, that's the first part. You got to have real numbers to work with before you can move the needle in any direction. And if NextBridge wants to go ahead and go on the blockchain, how do they do it when everybody's sitting on the outside? I mean, I don't know the mechanics of it. And again, I'll plead ignorance. That my opinion is you've got two divisions. You've got people on the inside and the outside. So it's got to be reconciled somehow.
Perfect. Well done. There's a Ted in Rhode Island. You want to unmute and go ahead and ask Scott something? Go ahead. Thank you. Oh yeah, your microphone's broke still. Shoot. Just text me the question. Scott, if you could kind of tell one thing that we haven't heard yet is what can people do now since this has happened? What's something that they could do to try to recoup the money that they lost, or what's the path going forward?
Well, the path going forward is we're talking a Robert Frost thing, two paths cross in the woods kind of deal. There's a couple paths that are going to split off here. So you've got litigation, which is lawsuits, and then you've got class action lawsuits, and then in addition to the class action lawsuits, you've got arbitration if you choose to go the arbitration route and try and resolve your claims. The reality, though, is that I think this has to end up somehow being a settlement from FINRA and DTCC, which is the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation, which is more or less the bag holder for trading and clearing securities in the United States. And they have an insurance policy. They're backed by, there's a lot of participants in the market that have to pay into that so that they have an insurance fund, a rainy day fund to cover exactly what we have in the MMTLP situation. So I can't, literally, I'm not comfortable giving legal advice because I'm not an attorney. I'm just a pro se guy and I'm a sailor. What I can say is the first step is people have to make sure they check their accounts and make sure that there's no treachery going on. We've already identified the last couple of days because of what happened with me and Schwab. People are photocopying and printing out their account statements. Any emails they've gotten from the major brokerages, they're printing them out to have a record of it. By law, the brokerages are supposed to keep their records for 3 years on printed stuff, digital stuff, recordings, audios for 3 years, and other materials have to be kept for 6 years. In my case, on September 14th, Schwab admitted that they were deleting emails. They had deleted emails. And then on the 16th, they admitted that they had destroyed an audio. So it's in people's best interest to make sure they they print out what they have and have a hard copy of it. So that's the first thing they can do at the lowest level. Make sure you have your own data preserved. Then to go to the next level, it's basically you're talking litigation at a class action level, getting together with other investors, potentially forming groups to go after different investment groups or brokerages. I'm after Schwab, GTS, and FINRA. Other people were invested with Robinhood, Fidelity, E-Trade, a variety of other trading groups. So to go forward, you have to, you've got to make sure that your ducks are in order. And listen, when people go to their accounts and they see that stuff's been deleted right there and then, they've got what I would call, they've got a legitimate claim against the brokerage right there, because what are they trying to hide and what are they trying to destroy? And most of the time, the stuff that's getting destroyed is emails related to MMTLP. So anyways, the long shot though is, I mean, the long shot, the long pole in the tent, so to speak, is we've got to get a case to survive into a district court where the major brokerages are held accountable. And
Oh, real quick, guys, I'm gonna have McGaso and Doug kind of interact with Scott directly while I transition to a vehicle, and then when I'm in the vehicle, we'll be able to. But everyone else, please start raising your hands. Let's get the questions going for Scott. Doug first, McGaso second. I'll be right back.
So it's always been curious to me, you know, about the stock trades. I tried getting back into it in about 2008, which was a very bad year for that, obviously.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion that, you know, you can't tell the players without a scorecard. In other words, you shouldn't be involved in something like this unless you really know what you're doing. And it takes a lot of time and effort to do this. Would you say that that's sound advice, or what would you suggest?
Well, I'm just saying, you know, the biggest, the Latin phrase that always comes to mind is caveat emptor, buyer beware. In the current market volatility, and again, I'm not in a position to offer financial advice, I'm just making observations. Based on everything I've seen in the last 2 years in MMTLP, it shattered any illusion I had that anybody on Wall Street that was, you know, at that level was playing fairly. We have regulatory capture. FINRA and the SEC are controlled by financial interests. I mean, the revolving door at FINRA and the SEC, from the Goldman Sachs and the JP Morgans and the Citadels, that revolving door spins at the SEC at like the speed of a Pratt and Whitney turbine blade. I mean, that's how fast it cycles out. I mean, you know, Gary Gensler was a Goldman Sachs guy. He's going to go back there when he's done, most likely. If, you know, if Donald Trump becomes president again, he's going to get fired. Oh, well, he'll go back to Goldman. But the reality is other countries are making their markets cleaner, and they're getting rid of a lot of the problems that they have here. I mean, it's interesting. The SEC got called, and for some of the news, I'm just going off news articles I read. SEC personnel had to get sent to Thailand because Thailand had a problem with its market. And what was it? It was American companies creating fake shares and shorting and naked synthetics that had poisoned their market. And they had to, you know, they had to talk to the SEC and said, you guys have to knock this off. So in all different places where their governments are more flexible and more responsive, they're cleaning up their market. So what does that say about potential capital flight for our country? So, I mean, and look at the BRICS countries, let alone Thailand. BRICS countries, China, Brazil, Russia, India, and I think the BRICS countries are now, I don't know, 50 countries now or something like that have signed on or are signing on. And what does that mean? That means, okay, so we're going to get off the dollar because we know the dollar is a fiat currency, which is just got to control. The Americans are printing money. You've got guys like, you got, I forget his, the guy at, I think it was Goldman, who was saying, look, we have infinite liquidity. In other words, we'll just keep the printing presses going. That's how our economy rolls. We just print money. So the reality is foreign countries are looking at us as no longer as this pillar of virtue and economic well-being. They're seeing us as cancerous. And they're doing what they can to basically cut us off. So the problem is our politicians and our leaders should be aware of this, probably are aware of it, but our politicians is captured by big industry and big money as FINRA is captured, you know, it's regulatory capture for FINRA, regulatory capture for the SEC. Is our Congress captured by K Street? That's the question. And the reality is, I think the answer to that is something we don't really want to know.
Yeah, I think we all know it, you know,
Yeah, right.
unfortunately.
Right. So how do we fix it? That's the big question.
That's the question. And
Right.
what model do we use, you know, to do that? Because somebody's got to be doing it right somewhere in the world. Or
Well,
at least a lot closer to right.
Well, I think you've got to look at the economies around the world that are actually experiencing relatively safe growth. And again, that's not us
Yeah.
right now. You know, inflation is absolutely devastating American families. The powers that be don't care. You print the money, it devalues the currency. It's just a vicious circle, and we're not getting out of it anytime soon unless we have a true come to Jesus moment with the markets, with the regulators, with the broker dealers, sit them all down and have regulatory reform. But again, I don't think that's possible. I mean, that's my rosy scenario on that. I really think the real long-term solution would be to start a stock market independent of New York, get it out of New York, get it away from K Street, and basically have it an old-fashioned thing. You put money in, like 100 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, the working man could go, aha, I've got some extra money. I'm going to buy a share of Ma Bell. Okay. I'm going to buy a share of Ma Bell, and I'm going to buy 1 or 2 or 10 a week, and then I'll have my Social Security, and I know it's not going to go away, and I'll get a dividend out of it. It used to be Americans invested for the dividends. You never actually sold the company. You never sold the stock. You bought it, and you got a dividend. That was the whole point of investing. And now we've got all these words and phrases and clauses and financial instruments, rehypothecation, which is just insanity. It's selling a debt to sell a debt to sell a debt, which is marginalized. And you just keep going on and on and on. And Wall Street's got like 1,000 different ways to destroy a small investor if they want to. They target a company, the company's going to get killed. And that's exactly what happened with Metamaterials. Metamaterials got targeted because ostensibly its intellectual property was good. It was into alternative battery manufacture using new technology, and it got destroyed by shorts. It literally, the technology got taken out, and they literally stopped trading. The ticker was deleted on August 24th, not deleted. It was stopped trading August 21st or 24th. So the company was literally forced into bankruptcy so the intellectual property could be taken, and the way they did it was by shorting it to death. And that's a common tactic in other countries. Like I said, when you've got the Chinese, when you have the Chinese communists telling us that our markets are rigged, we've got a problem.
Yeah, like I said, I watched The Big Short and a couple other movies on this trying to explain it, which I didn't think was too bad, but it gave it to me as just like that ain't a game that it's kind of like watching horse racing. Unless you know what's going on. In fact, you'd be better off probably invested in horse racing.
Well, there's an old Italian saying, a fish rots from the head down, right?
Yeah.
With FINRA, Robert Cook's the CEO. Right after the scandal happened with MMTLP, all the FOIA requests went out from MMTLP shareholders. He responds to a letter from Congressman Ralph Norman saying that the letter was January of 2024, just recently, technically. And he says, we're absolutely sure, in one paragraph, he says, we're absolutely sure when MMTLP started trading, there was only 2.65 million shares short outstanding. So first of all, you're the regulator. That company just went private. You got to take care of those 2.65 million shares outstanding. You allowed people to get away with shorting it, and you haven't told them they have to cover. So that's your first problem. Second problem is, a couple of paragraphs later, he says, but we're the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and we're supposed to keep track of shares wherever they go. But we have no mechanism to track when shares go to offshore. We don't have any mechanism once they leave these people or this company, and we can't do that. Well, we just don't have the capacity to do that. So basically, here's the interesting thing. That's a fraud upon Congress. He gave false testimony to Congress. That's a criminal penalty. Is anybody going to call him on it? I don't know. I have a sense that at some point in time in my filings, I'm going to make what's called a criminal referral on Cook, because that's not the only thing that he told some whoppers to Congress about. It was well within his power to straighten this thing out, and he didn't. And what's worse is, on the UPC committee that did the trade halt, there was nobody in there that did what's called a counterparty analysis. When Sam Drady pulled his blue sheets, the people that are on that committee were all members of industry, so they knew that this thing was going to blow to the moon as a short squeeze, and they had a counterparty interest in that data, meaning technically the board of directors, not the board of directors, the UPC halt committee, the people on that committee for FINRA, 12 people, 10 people, I forget the exact number, they were doing insider trading because they were protecting their own interests. There's been no accountability on it. 70 members of Congress and senators wrote letters, but didn't get subpoenas. They've all said, oh, we're here to help the little guy, but they never do. They've made promises that they haven't kept. They said that they were going to get involved, and they haven't. They've threatened and they've done the dance. They've done the kabuki dance and they've blown smoke in every possible direction except for success. So literally what I think the takeaway here is, and again, the MMTLP community, we're not just fighting for ourselves. Look, the AMC people and GameStop was the forerunner. They got shut down in 2021. Congress did a big investigation and nothing happened. So literally with MMTLP, we really have our first shot as investors because of the brutality of the U3 halt, maybe something which has never been litigated before in U.S. courts, except in a couple of cases related to MMTLP. We may have our first shot to do reform by court action. So do I really think that's going to happen? No, I'm here because I have hope. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. So my issue is, look, we got to stay in the fight. People have got to do their homework, and more people got to get involved. Like literally, think about all the U.S. district courts in the United States. If there were investor groups from MMTLP in every one of these areas that got together and filed smaller class actions, represented class action of 100 people, we the MMTLP holders of California, we go into a Ninth Circuit court, they might have a better shot than I've gotten in Vermont in prevailing. But the thing is, once you go into a class action, you get over arbitration. There's no arbitration in class actions, from what I understand. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a simple sailor trying to make his way in the world. But I think, what's our strength? Our strength is numbers, and our strength is also that we can hit them from angles they haven't been hit from before. And that's what we're doing in Vermont, raising all the constitutional challenges.
Right. Right. Well, I think Migueso's got a question. So go ahead, Migueso.
It wasn't really a question, but these corporations that are acting on behalf of the federal government, if you would, and you run into immunity situations there. Have you considered approaching the individual capacity of those individuals that work for these NGOs or subcorporations or whatever? Because they're acting as a fiduciary. In a fiduciary responsibility, it sounds like they're failing in that, where you could take them to court in their individual capacity.
Yeah, but they don't have a fiduciary responsibility to us as investors because that's FINRA. Their responsibility is broader market regulation. The fiduciary duty, and I don't even have a fiduciary duty from Schwab to me because in my brokerage agreement, it's not there. So I agree that'd be a thing. And to go after them individually, I'd still run into that, the Maginot line of immunity. So from a realistic standpoint, I would love to do what you're saying, but the problem is we're never going to get at them with that immunity shield down. Once we get a court to drop their shields on immunity, then I think all bets are off and we can do some broken field running to get evidence about blue sheeting, not just from MMTLP, but there's like literally, I want to say a half a dozen kickers out there that are getting shorted to death right now. AMC, GameStop. And if we can get the blue sheets on MMTLP, we can also get the blue sheets on GameStop and say, okay, the truth is they shorted the death out of this thing too. I mean, so that's the end state. The end state is total market reform, not just to fix us, but to fix the systemic problems.
What about a Bivens action that takes away their immunity?
Yeah, I mentioned that in my last brief, but I wanted an economic Bivens action. That economic under the 9th Amendment, I raised that issue. Basically, that Americans, per all the different mentionings in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights about economic rights, the 9th Amendment gives us economic identifies, doesn't give us our rights, it acknowledges our God-given rights. Let me back up on that. So by acknowledging those God-given rights to economic liberty, then I'm saying then you can bring a Bivens action for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So I am got some hands up here. Thank you, Migueso and Doug. Rosemary, Florida, go ahead with your question. Thank you. Ken, California, please make sure it's a question. You know the rules here. Go ahead, Rosemary. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of the information and the time you have given to us, first of all. Now, can they do any of these shenanigans with IPOs? What happens under those circumstances?
I'm not certain on IPOs whether they're allowed to be shorted right out of the gate. I don't know. I'll plead ignorance on that. I would assume that there's other treachery that can be brought to IPOs. But generally, right from the get-go, I think it's very difficult for them to have short sales. But again, let me back off the question and say, if technically, I just don't know on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I got a question for you, Scott.
Yep.
What is potentially what is a good outcome that could happen in this scenario?
Well, a good outcome for the MMTLP people, or an outcome for the entire market?
Let's just go with MMTLP first, because a lot of us
Okay.
that are aware of the MMTLP. I mean, I lost money, copy paste, lost money. A lot of people on here got hit by this. So what's a positive outcome for this? And then you can extrapolate and express deeper as well.
Well, the best outcome is that at some point in time, the brand X, the unholy trinity of broker dealers, big finance, and FINRA get an idea. Well, throw in the SEC there, make it a quad. They get the idea that we're not going away. And should there be any breach anywhere in a U.S. court where FINRA's immunity goes away, then we actually have a card to play. When we have our cards to play, there's a couple options. They can give us our 2 days of trading back, which would be buy to close only for the short positions. You're holding a short position, you've got 2 days to cover. Is that likely? I don't know. I would tend to doubt it. Is there any form of a settlement that could take place? I would surely think that that they would actually have to come to that table and sit down and talk with us and say, how do we get out of this? Now, remember, March 20th of 2023, a broker dealer on the phone to me from Schwab told me that MMTLP was trading at 100 times the lit market, which was the visible market that we see on our daily screens in alternative trading systems. And literally, with him saying that, and that was unprompted for me, we're just having a loose conversation about MMTLP. That literally would meant that the lowest price that we could possibly see that day was MMTLP on its last minute of closing was at $2.90 a share. So that meant that the minimum that he was seeing, or other people in the brokerage were seeing, was $290, $300 a share, was something that might have been seen on their Bloomberg boxes. I tend to believe they were seeing numbers that were far higher than that. I've seen evidence and screenshots and pictures of trading, videos of the ticker just screaming. But anyways, in terms of settlement, it'll come down to exactly what do they have to lose by going forward, because they're gonna do this as a zero-sum game. They don't really care about the retail investors. They're caring about not going through an extinction level event for themselves financially. And I believe these broker dealers like the Schwabs, the Robin Hoods, Fidelity, E-Trade, they're heavy into MMTLP and overselling. I think they realize that if they don't solve this problem quickly, and this gets into the wild of the U.S. court system beyond arbitration and motions to dismiss, I think they're looking at an extinction level event. So that doesn't make us better because they're broke. But we do have this thing called the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation, which is sitting on a pile of money that the broker dealers pay in as an insurance fund for economic catastrophes. And realistically, the market makers and the broker dealers have to go through stress tests regularly, the efficacy of which are sometimes doubtful. Is it window dressing to show everything's good, nothing to see here, we're good? Or are they legitimately economically justifying and confirming that they have the strength to handle some bad times economically in the event of a market crash or slump or something along those lines? That's a rabbit hole we could always go down at a later time. But my point is, there is money to take care of the MMTLP people. The question is somebody going to have the political will to get it done? And I haven't seen that, because I think that's going to be a solution that may have to involve Congress, and who knows, other political operators in the economic ecosystem of the United States.
So you think there is money for those that suffered the scandal, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes. There has to be money, because the brokers are obligated to cover these positions. I mean,
going back on the naked shorting, some believe that the banks are in similar trouble in the sense where they're only supposed to loan out money that they have, and they've been essentially loaning money that they don't have, just like the brokers have been selling shares that they don't have. Are you
Correct.
aware? Are you aware of this potential bank run?
Well, I think a bank run, I couldn't forecast that. What I do know is the SEC in their own documents have stated that for every legitimate short share that's out there, that's somebody who borrows a share that legitimately exists, that's not created artificially, that's part of the float of a company, it's an established number and it's real, that for every legitimate short that's out there, there's 50 synthetic shorts in the US economy for every legitimate short. So if the banks are doing lending to hedge funds so that they can continue to short and short and short ad infinitum, the bank exposure is just going to be literally thermonuclear. So, I mean, to look at things from a financial standpoint long term, none of what is going on now is good. And none of this stuff, if it is sustainable, eventually, like I said, look at the foreign indicators out there of flight away from the dollar, and flight away from investing in the U.S. stock market, and like the BRICS is gaining strength while our dollar is, and we're in inflationary times here that are not going to be resolved anytime without hard times. And that's what people, I think, need to understand, is that this does not get resolved without pain. And I think it's going to be a lot of pain.
In your opinion, is this going to be worse than the Great Depression in the 20s?
I couldn't forecast that. And I mean, I don't want to go down the path of fear mongering. I would just say that there's a lot of indicators out there, from a variety of different angles, not just the economic issues. I mean, you've got social issues, you've got political issues, you've got security issues, you've got the food security issues, you've got energy security issues. Literally, you do a daisy chain of all the different things that happen as a result of the counterfeiting of the entire U.S. stock market. And that daisy chain, they all detonate like right behind each other in rapid succession.
Perfect. Ken, I'm going to let you ask a question. If you go past 30 seconds, I'm muting you. Please respect the rules.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Scott. Okay, Scott, my question is, did you approach Financial Service Committee? That's the key in political circles where you need to go.
No, I did not.
That's where you need to go. That's where SEC, you can have them by the balls. Financial Service Committee is the culprit in our nation. They all should be in jail, if you ask me. You need to approach them and bring a live hearing. That is only the way to attack this at this point.
Ted has a question. Let me read it to you. It says, how many of the opposing lawyers do you think are on this call right now? Uh-oh. That's a good question.
I don't know. I couldn't venture a guess on that. I would say I don't know. I'm sure there's people from Brand X here that are taking notes, but I mean, I'm an open book, and everything I'm doing, I post, and there's no subterfuge here. Basically, my motto on this stuff is, hey, diddle, diddle, right up the middle. Let's just go right up the middle with this stuff. There's no subterfuge. There's no nuance here. I mean, I've had some pretty provocative exchanges with Schwab's attorneys. I've had some very provocative exchanges thus far with FINRA's attorney, who basically casts anybody that challenges the, shall we say, challenges the crown in these endeavors, as he dismisses us as conspiracy theorists. Well, it's not a conspiracy when the U.S. government's financial regulatory authority takes the holdings and the property and the money of 65,000 investors. That's not a conspiracy. That's a fact. And I think what we've got some very, very coarse arguments from our side too, but we'll save that for another time.
Wow, members, here's your time to raise your hands. We still got a lot of interest in this topic. Doug, so go ahead. You guys are unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is regarding the Clearfield doctrine. that says when a private commercial paper is used by a corporate government, that it loses its sovereign status and becomes no more than a private corporation itself.
Well, I don't know anything about it, sir. I'm sorry.
I would look up the USA versus, Clearfield Doctrine versus the United States.
Okay.
Because what they're doing is, like you said, they're manipulating the whole process. But at some point in time within the process, they lose their status. The problem is we as individuals aren't educated enough on the law, if you would, because they're using legalese instead of lawful doctrine. And we have to go back to the law and not to the legal aspects of it.
I have nothing to argue the point. It's valid.
So on that point, Scott, are you open to the idea of connecting with our corruption pillar and seeing if we could also help you with your case?
Well, I'll take anything you want. If you guys want to file an amicus curiae brief, that's fine. Literally review what I've done, review the other cases that have involved MMTLP. And if you guys want to file an amicus brief in my circumstances, it's welcome. I'm not going to say no. Literally that's your right. You can file an amicus brief in any case you want, but in terms of that would be the best help you could give us right now. Okay, well, Magaso is listening, and I have your contact info, Scott, and we're gonna definitely add this as probably one of our first action items to help out a guest that came on. So you mentioned that there's money on the sides potentially for the MMTLP people, but I didn't necessarily hear what is the long-term goal, how all of us are going to get relief from this. I'm hearing other countries are like banning short selling. I think that would be the best idea, is ending naked short selling. Yeah, no, I agree. No, yeah, you've got to get rid of the naked short selling rule, because literally the market makers can do debt equity swaps to a hedge fund. Let's say a hedge fund wants to destroy a company, like what happened to Meta Materials. They can go to like the Rubensteins and the Ken Griffins of the world and say, hey, do a debt equity swap. Give me 10 million shares right now so I can go and short this thing. The market maker, couple keystrokes later, the hedge fund's got its 10 million shares that it can short the hell out of a company, drive it into bankruptcy, and then literally the market maker, per the FINRA rules, has just to give a promise that it will look and make a good faith attempt to try and find the shares that it just lent and created, which is literally you're ringing the dinner bell for corruption and stock market fraud of like that's stratospheric levels. That's the first thing that has to go. There can't be any naked short selling. You can't just print shares. There has to be something legitimate behind it. And I would say the short selling rules have to be changed too. I mean, I don't even really think there should be short selling. A lot of people have made some very good arguments that short selling is a good way of policing the market, and it allows for investors to do real price discovery as long as they're committed that the company, they're not doing it for nefarious reasons. If they legitimately think it's a junk company, they short it and they take their chances. But Warren Buffett said it best. He says he never shorted a company in his life. And why did he not? Because your capacity to lose is infinite. I mean, that's exactly what happened with MMTLP. The people that had shorted it, literally, they saw it running away, and they're going to have to cover. But that only happened in a certain circumstance. Remember, with MMTLP, at the last day of trading, there was something of 15 million shares were sold short, I believe was the number. Why would you sell something short like that if 2 days later you're going to have to walk yourself right into an absolute inferno of a short squeeze to cover? So it clearly shows that people were tipped off that there was going to be a halt. But anyway, to get back to the question, to actually circle back to it, long term, I'm not absolutely certain how everybody gets paid. The mechanism on that, I haven't worked out. I've war gamed it with a couple of my friends and other MMTLP people a couple different ways. Each way has its pros and cons, like every other option. But I think that's a bridge we cross only if the lawsuit that I have filed actually gets legs and I'm able to get to the next stage. And I think discovery is what we need. So I think that it's all to get back to it, to summarize, it's a whole new world once we get the blue sheets for MMTLP.
Right. We got another question from alias James Bond. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, Scott, what do you think about, the money, when there's a short sale, there's a long attached to it, and they get that money right away. What if that money were to go into some sort of escrow account that could only be relieved to them once the locate is consummated?
Well, I think that's going to involve an awful lot of trading algorithm tracking and data tracking. And from what we've seen on that, the high frequency algos and algorithms and payment for order flow, internalization of orders by market makers, where they basically they take an order and they internalize it rather than floating it on the real market for testing the price because they can do the trade themselves internally, which is illegal. That goes on all the time. So the reality is, would I trust a new variation of a system like that? I wouldn't, because you're gonna have a situation where anything that's going to be electronically based and deals with shorting in a circumstance like that, it's going to have an infinite capacity to get abused. I really think we've got to take a hard look at just having shorting can only take place in certain circumstances. For example, no shorting of shares, no shorting is allowed of a company, let's say, that's got a ticker price of under $20 a share. So you can short the big boys, which would, okay, you're shorting like an Occidental Petroleum at $140 a share. The volatility isn't going to be there. You're making pennies on the dollar or pennies on a percentage point play. The volatility gets taken out of the market, on that. So, I mean, I think there's regulatory ways that problem could be addressed. I just don't think that allowing them room to maneuver on stuff like that would work.
We have a question coming in from an alias ramen soup. If you could try to unmute, you're being asked to unmute your microphone. While we're waiting for him to figure out how to do that, Jiminy Cricket, I thought Doug was unmuted. Copy paste. Do you have any other comment you want to make while we're waiting for Ramen Soup to figure out how to unmute? Ramen Soup, just try to put your mouse or your finger over the microphone button and turn it from red to white. Doug, you got any thing you want to chime in on?
Well, like I said before, it's with regards to all of this stuff, I got out of that business years ago just because it just seemed so fixed for me. But I'd love to see something. And as a matter of fact, when you mentioned them starting up a new stock market, I've heard about them possibly doing that here in Texas as well, and that there are some investors involved in that. But I don't know any more beyond that. And I'd love to see something that's a little more regulated or something that's, let's just say, a fair play for everybody.
Right. Well, as much as I'm opposed to technology in the terms of where it's being abused by the apex predators right now, I'm not opposed to having a very sterile AI system or a series of systems that can be market regulators. Use a thinking machine, a learning machine that's programmed to basically look for spoofing trades, for front running of trades, where literally we're using the power of AI for something that would be regulatory and take the human element out of it and the corruption out of it. I mean, that would also allow for a little bit of wiggle room. Again, it's something, bigger brains than myself would have to war game it. But I think literally, we need to put all options on the table, and we have to really kind of drill down to, the American solution to everything is not necessarily, that one guy's got the right answer. It's everybody talking in a room. Let's come out with a solution in 2 hours. 10 guys getting together. A committee is going to solve some problems if they get the right intellectual basis in there. Get a bunch of people together, war game a stock exchange. There's enough intellectual firepower I've seen in just the MMTLP community. The people I deal with on a daily basis are sharp. I got, there's the best guy I know in terms of crunching numbers, a guy named Marcos down in Florida, and he's literally one of the top researchers I've ever seen, period. We got people that are great at social media that have been leading the charge here, that are on X, that know the markets inside and out, upside down, left, right, change the color, and they know what the next color is going to be. and they've all got great ideas. So I would say, like, literally, you get these people together and say, okay, guys, here's your mission statement. You know, your assigned task is set up a new U.S. stock market that functions clean and fair, invests in U.S. businesses. It's not going to be corrupted. That's your assigned task. Now walk out of the meeting and come back to me. What are the 150 to 500 implied tasks that have to be solved to do that? All right.
Maybe they should do that under a private membership association, a PMA, which would be take them separate from government.
Maybe.
You mentioned discovery and things you wanted the judge to look at. Is there any other discoveries or things that you could mention that maybe they haven't been forthright in coming that would be helpful to you?
Well, we haven't got to the discovery stage yet. We're still in the initial phases where they're trying to knock me out of the box and drive me into arbitration, and also, you know, raise immunity by FINRA and failure to state a claim from GTS. It's your standard boilerplate challenges to anybody who's pursuing them. Once we get over that in the discovery, I would like to get blue sheets. There's a bunch of other things in discovery. I'd like to get Schwab to show me that they have their Form 211s, that they were actually legally allowed to trade the stock. I sent them 5 pages of questions back in June before I sued them, and I asked them, 211s, let's see them. They refused. I asked them if they had any communications with any members of the UPSC committee. They said they did not. I asked them if they oversold the company. Did they oversell the ticker running up to December 8th of 2022? They refused to answer the question. I have 5 pages of refusals from them. So that will be the boilerplate discovery. That'll be the discovery they get. And Schwab has already been notified by me 2 weeks ago that I intend to make, under the federal rules of civil procedure, the questions that I gave them back in June are going to be my first discovery request for interrogatories, and they call them production of documents, which is show me your paperwork, answer some questions under oath. Now, the important thing is if I end up in arbitration, I can't do interrogatories, which are questions, written questions under oath, and I really can't get any documents. And the arbitration board leader is the only guy who can issue subpoenas. So this is the whole problem with our system is if somebody's got a legitimate claim, they're going to put you in arbitration, and then your ability to fight is not one hand tied behind your back, but both your hands are tied behind your back.
Wow. So Ramen Soup has not figured out how to unmute. Could you please send your question over chat? And Migeso, while we're here, Leslie's got a question, but before Leslie tunes in, I just want to ask Migeso, this is a really good starting point for us to try to help in corruption. What do you think about this, Migeso? I think this is a good action for us.
Well, my feeling is that anything that exposes the lies or brings the truth to surface, regardless of where it lies in government or individuals, it's time to bring it out.
Sounds good. Leslie, go ahead with your question. Thank you.
Scott, I was going to go ahead and also, ask this. What about all the people that have been affected by this fraud? What are they doing to fight this? Are they suing people? I mean, we're talking about a lot of money here.
Well, there's been MMTLP shareholders have gone to Congress. They've lobbied Congress. They've pled their case there. But they run into, literally the K Street people, the lobbyists for the industry, the rich, the money people. And as MMTLP lobbyists, our people, MMTLP shareholders were roaming the halls of Washington in the Rayburn building, trying to explain to Congress exactly how we got ripped off. There was a rugby scrum of people from the industries and the brokerages and other people going to the same congressional offices and saying, no, it's all a conspiracy. This didn't happen. These people that got defrauded, no, they didn't. Everything was normal. And the extraordinary reasons for the halt was because there was some issue with settlement. Well, the problem with those arguments and what they were telling the congressman, like Pete Sessions' office was involved, Comer's office, Norman, a bunch of other offices. But the problem with that argument is that when you come out and you say you're going to strip 65,000 people of their money and their interest, and you say there's an extraordinary event that took place, well, define it. It's not defined in the FINRA rules. It's not. So you have a constitutional ambiguity there, assuming they're even constitutionally constituted as an organization, because they never defined it. And to this date, FINRA has never given any legitimate reason for it except to say there was a problem with settlement. We're the ones who caused the problem with settlement by introducing the element of confusion by altering legal documents that were owned by the metamaterials and the MMTLP people. They altered the corporate actions before they got filed. I mean, it's telling that on December 8th at 3 o'clock, before the trading stopped in MMTLP an hour later, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, FINRA comes out with a caveat emptor statement regarding MMTLP stock. This coming after Sam Drady on December 5th had already said there's fraud and alarm bells were going off because he pulled the blue sheets and oh my God, what did they find? Yeah, you've got literally an apocalyptic level squeeze is going to go on, and it's going to absolutely bury these brokerages and market makers. So,
but not to happen, right? I mean, the Congress hearings ever get anywhere? I mean, what did the Congress hearings really do?
Nothing. Nothing.
So,
understand, literally, they're literally Congress did nothing. They promised a lot. There were threats of subpoenas. So you have to look, my math is sound. Somebody got to them. It's that simple. You know, let's take the Occam's razor approach to what happened in Congress and what happened with the trading. Distilled down to the simplest answer that's rational. Yeah, there's corruption across the entire U.S. political spectrum and the economy. So that's the situation we're in. So how do we fight it? You got to fight it everywhere. You got to get it involved in the grassroots level. Yeah, I mean, we're not just talking an economic situation with MMTLP and the broader market. We're talking constitutional issues. We're talking larger economic issues, supply and demand, production, economic security in the form of energy production, food production, and they're all intertangled. It's one huge fur ball that the next Congress and the next president are going to have to deal with.
And so this is so deep that even the Congress people are kind of like, let's look the other way and kick the can down the road, and let's not even bring up the can anymore, because you just said Congress didn't do anything because they're probably complicit. They're probably involved in the illegal shenanigans. And here we are barking up a tree and nothing's going to happen. Well, I mean, nothing's going to happen so far. And even to the level of the government, Congress level people, there's no subpoenas, there's no action, suing anybody. It's all swept under the carpet, just like every other scandal the government does. How do you feel about that?
Well, they could just do one simple issue. One congressman on the House Finance Committee issues a subpoena. They get a subpoena out of the committee for the blue sheets from the SEC, and it's over. So why, Martin Luther King said it best, the truth shall set you free. Well, guess what? They absolutely are refusing to be free or to set anybody else free. They don't want to know. They literally don't want to know. And that's the crux of the problem. They're not just kicking the can down the road, they're kicking the entire economy down the road.
You mentioned that they work for you mentioned the Crown, they're working for the Crown. Now, these lawyers that you're working with, do they classify themselves as esquires?
I don't know, bud. I really don't.
That would be a title of nobility, and they would have to be registered under the Foreign Registration Act.
Well, that's kind of esoteric, bud. I appreciate the comment, but no, they're just lawyers. They're American lawyers. They're getting paid to do their job. They're giving it 100%, and they're very good at what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be hired for the position that they're in, and that's what we're facing. But no, I haven't paid attention to that stuff. I don't. That's a minutia issue that I'm playing for keeps on the Constitution right now. And that's what the focus needs to be.
Well, that'll be Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 of the Constitution.
Okay.
Well, we're going to be able to work offline for sure. But I copy and paste has a question. Go ahead, copy and paste.
First off, I'd just like to point out that it would not be a good idea bringing ramen soups into the conversation. He has been trolling this community for over 2 years now before the halt even happened. Oh, I ramen soups. He had his hand up, and you were going to allow him to speak, and I was just pointing out it would not be a good idea.
Okay, so let me ban him. Hang on. So he's a bad guy.
Yeah, I'm okay with everyone having their say and hear from both sides, but yeah, he's been a bad actor for over 2 years. I did want to ask Scott if he would like to maybe discuss the situation of the connection now between MMTLP and DJT, and also where JD Vance is coming to the situation also.
You mean the relationship explained between them? What part? They're both heavily shorted and attacked. I mean,
As far as the letter from the CEO, Devin Nunes, to Congress.
Oh, well, he mentioned us?
Yes.
Well, I think in reference, that was one of their notice that the trading halt in MMTLP and some of the treachery that was involved in AMC and GameStop, reflective of market conditions that were not conducive towards fair trade. So I think he used us as a stalking horse, which was good. But whether or not that'll bear fruit down the line, I don't know. I do know it was nice for him to mention it, and I also know that, you know, if out of an abundance of caution, I can cautionarily say I'm pretty sure that the DJT people are watching the lawsuit in Vermont and the constitutional issues that we're raising, because our fight is still their fight. I mean, look at what the SEC has done to the DJT stock since that letter was issued, and then more importantly, I mean, you're bringing up a good point, which is the manipulation isn't just in MMTLP and DJT in the sense that they're shorting us. You know, MMT obviously not trading anymore officially, but it's still trading in foreign markets under different tickers. We've proven that. But with DJT, the stock is, why hasn't the SEC done an investigation along with FINRA? Well, every time there's an assassination attempt on President Trump, which apparently there's been 2 of them now, somebody took out and decided to short DJT stock, yet there's no investigation. See, this market fraud and this market problem we have is underscored by the fact that people attempted to profit prior to any attempt on Donald Trump's life. There was shorting that was out of control in his stock on both of them. So that raises the larger question of, it's not just market manipulation for economic gain, it's also market manipulation that's going to end up in political gain.
Well, thank you, copy and paste, for letting me know the bad player, he's gone. Also, I want to say that there's a Karen Collects. Go ahead and try to unmute and ask your question, and then James Bond is on deck. Okay,
yeah, so
Karen?
the SEC has been hiding behind, there may or may not be a current and active investigation, so we can't say a word. At what point can the gig be up? You know, when is your investigation going to be done? Is there something in their
What, where the SEC investigation into George Palikaris and John Berta?
Just they're saying we cannot divulge any information because there may or may not be an ongoing investigation.
Well, they hide behind that all the time. The problem with them is the Supreme Court just ruled in the Jarkizi case that when they bring when they bring a civil proceeding to try and gain cash from somebody for wrongdoing, those people have to be afforded a U.S. District Court proceeding. So that's why John Berta and Giorgio Palikaris are defending themselves in the Southern District of New York. And what that will lead to is discovery. That Palikaris and Berta will get to question the SEC, and they can't raise it that we're conducting a criminal investigation. We can't release data to you. No, under the federal rules of civil procedure, you brought this proceeding against us. The Supreme Court said we were to be afforded all this discovery rights. So why don't you give us everything you've got on the blue sheets and all the manipulation that took place? So the SEC is playing a very, very dangerous away game in the Southern District of New York right now. Because if Palak, Harris, and Berta are going to be, in the discovery phase, they're entitled to what's going to be presented against them. They get to ask for the files. There's no more cloak of shielding the documents that would be vital to their defense, because they're going to be afforded all the luxuries and privileges that are there in the federal rules of civil procedure: interrogatories, depositions, subpoenas, all that stuff. So they'll be able to protect themselves pretty vigorously. But the problem for the SEC is, if I was a gambling man, would you really want to let that cat out of the bag the day that, Palak, Harris, and Berta say, let's see the blue sheets, and we'll prove that the people that are committing the fraud were the people at FINRA?
Please, Major Tom, go ahead with your question. Major Tom, go ahead.
I got a question. You hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. I think it was Wendy that asked a question about how it was affecting people. And for myself, I'm paralyzed, been paralyzed for 33 years. And I invested in this back when it was Torchlight. And then when it rolled over into MMTLP, there I am trapped. And the funds I was getting from that was what I was using for my supplemental insurance. And I have a lot of health problems. And if I didn't have supplemental insurance on top of my Social Security, I'd be screwed. And
wow, what a story.
And I'm married. I live in Maryland, so I'm screwed again. Because
sorry about that state. Yeah, that's a terrible state.
And they, there's no real help there, and my money's been frozen, and I'm just struggling. And credit card bills just keep stacking up. That's all I can do.
Right.
Wow.
Well,
thank you, Major Tom.
I've talked to people that have like a friend of mine is an MMTLP. He's got 330,000 shares, and he got obliterated. I've talked to people that have 800,000 shares. I've talked to people that got 30,000, 40,000, 60,000, and they literally are economically devastated. Again. Yeah, this is the level of treachery and deceit in the U.S. stock market is amplified every time somebody opens their mouth from the MMTLP community. They can't hide it anymore. But the thing which is most repugnant to me is the fact that they're trying to hide it, they knew they were wrong and they might get caught by putting it out in the open, right in our face, saying with that extraordinary event, they're basically saying, we're going to take what you got. You've got no recourse. We're clean. We've got the full immunity. You got the iron triangle you're never going to get out of. And guess what? We own it. And that's it. The corruption's out in the open now. They're no longer even trying to hide it.
Wow. There's a Mar douchebag. Copy paste. Please let me know if this is a bad player too. But if you can unmute Mar douchebag, I'm sending you the unmute command. You gotta click the button to unmute and ask your question. Otherwise, James Bond, do you have another question?
I do not, but his name is Marduk, and he is a respected member of the MMTLP community, if that is so him.
Okay, well, help me tell him how to unmute. You're getting a prompt from me to unmute. You have to click with your finger or a mouse if you're on a computer to unmute.
That's not Marduk.
Oh, that's not Marduk.
Marduk is on here, and he can speak if he wants, but whoever this is, I think, is making fun of Marduk.
Ah, okay. Well, we'll go ahead and lower his hand then. I don't like trolls, and it seems like we got some tonight. Marduk, you seem important, so let's get you on here. There's Marduk and Marduk the meta guy. You guys go ahead and unmute your side there. MMTLP map, Mr. Wayne. Any of you guys want to unmute? Raise your hands. I'm calling on you.
o'clock p.m.
Resolve MMTLP. Ron, Nevada, you're silent. You're very critical on subjects like this. What are your thoughts on this tonight, Ron? Go ahead.
I'm ignorant concerning this, and I plan to stay that way. I've always figured it was a rigged game, and this just solidifies that notion to me.
Yeah,
That's all
well,
I got.
everything is rigged, my friend. So Marduk is unmuted. Tell us, Marduk, what are your thoughts about tonight and the MMTLP? Go ahead. You're unmuted, so go ahead and talk. I can't see him. Copy paste. Do you see him?
No, I don't see him right now.
Okay. Well, we got Marduk unmuted, but he's not saying anything. Karen Collects, I heard, was a troll as well. I don't know if she is or not.
You can unmute Andrew if he's still in here.
Andrew, let's hear from Andrew.
And Jonah Alvarez, if she wants to speak.
I'm looking for who's Insane, INSE.
He can speak.
Yeah, I've been trying to get him to unmute too. I'm driving on the 405, by the way, the worst freeway in America, hosting all you fine folk while I'm away from my home. And
can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is insane. Hey, Drew, that's my Duke. Yeah, there's been a few trolls come through here, so yeah.
That's okay.
But I want to thank you a lot, Scott. You know, from one commercial fisherman to another. I just one of my friends there just headed down from down East Maine, go squid, and I guess they've been doing good for the last couple of weeks. So you probably missed it.
No, I'm missing a lot right now. Yeah, I was supposed to go shipboard about 3 weeks ago, and I had to back out. And literally, it started lighting up our Baltimore Canyon, and it's been moving.
Oh yeah, yep. Know that place well. So all right, I'll let Andrew talk. He's the man.
Oh. Andrew, go ahead and unmute.
Hey, I really don't have. I mean, Scott's done a really great job of carrying the conversation here, from what I understand. And the only thing that I will say is, in addition to all of the corruption and fuckery that's gone on here, I think what's important to note is a community of people really came together in a big way for one another over the last 2 years. People have supported each other through devastating hardship. People have forged connections and bonds that are going to continue long after this thing is over. And I think that there is a real human story in just a human interest story in the way so many of these people have come together over the last 2 years. But I applaud Scott for his efforts. The guy's kind of like Rambo with his legal efforts, and I'm on the edge of my seat. You never know what Scott, you never know what you're going to say next, man. And it's interesting, and I'm sure he's keeping opposing counsel on their toes too. So I'm rooting for him. I'm cheering for him. And again, I'm just proud to be a small part of this community, and very proud that we're in this hole with people like Scott and so many other bright minds. So press on, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We thank you for that, Andrew. And we have copy paste. You're going to have to help me here. There's Resolve MMTLP, and then there's also Jack Smokes Meth. So I don't know if these are trolls, but I'm gonna try Resolve MMTLP. Go ahead. You're gonna get an unmuted request. You got to click the button. Go ahead. Resolve MMTLP.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for the mic, Scott. Thank you for all you do. Copy paste. It's Steph. Just wanted to thank you, and also thank you, Andrew. There was a, earlier when Wendy had asked about people who are suffering, I think what Scott is doing is what many of us are not able to do for a number of reasons, whether it be from the time and energy it takes to do this. I can't imagine the number of hours that it takes for each step that he's going through. One thing that has been very telling, and to Scott's point, is the nefarious actors and the institutions that are behind this did not at all expect a group of people from all different walks of life to come together. And really, enough is enough, to be honest. Not just for MMTLP and beyond, but this right here is really what's going to stand out, because it's a crime, and I know that this has been said over and over, a crime that has been frozen in time. And for the individuals who are in this Zoom right now and on social media, who instead of directing their attention and energy to proving us right or wrong, and instead they're belittling people, that's a very simple question that we have asked. It's a very simple thing. If we are wrong, then show us whatever documentation or data. And it's that simple. But it's been almost 2 years.
Right. Well, just look what happened in the last 3 days with us. Think about it this way. On September 14th, Schwab says they deleted all my emails, and then on the 16th, they said they deleted the critical audio, which is critical to 65,000 people's finances, because it's Schwab saying, yeah, it was trading. So they said on the 16th, they deleted it. And then yesterday at 4 o'clock, I get an email from Schwab saying, oh, no, we found it. When it's kind of convenient, they found it. It doesn't come with an affidavit saying we're certifying under oath it exists. Not that I believe that'd be worth the paper it's printed on. But now they put themselves in the position of saying, yeah, we deleted it. No, we didn't delete it. But you still can't use it. And when I said produce it, they wouldn't. And then on the 14th, when I had my first damage report that they were deleting things, I asked Schwab's attorneys, I gave them 3 chances. Call Texas, call Westlake, find out what really happened. No, it has nothing to do with your arbitration, was the comeback. The arrogance here is absolutely at the ionosphere level. I mean, like you're talking another 2 feet and you're in space. That's how high that is. So that arrogance is literally going to be something that I think the judge, when she looks at my filing tomorrow, whenever my submittal will go in sometime late tomorrow, opposing the arbitration, and I'm hoping the judge is going to say, there's no way we put this guy in arbitration. Sorry, troops, you destroyed evidence. Spoliation, Rule 37E. Guess what? The punishment for spoliation, Traudt gets a get out of arbitration pass, like on a Monopoly board. I go round and boardwalk at 400 miles an hour. I'm hoping that happens, because once I get past arbitration with this thing, on the grounds that they acted negligently and they destroyed evidence, then we're like, literally, guys, we're in the wild at that point. Now we're behind their lines. We're in behind them. We got through the gates. We're behind them. Now we can start to do some real running with Discovery. And I'm hoping I prayed more now in the last, I don't know, 2 months than any time in my life. I'm like literally go for my walks in the woods after doing this stuff, which is, it is draining, but it's a good cause. So it's not draining in the sense that, oh my God, I'm doing this again. It's draining in the sense that it does require a lot of work. But I do go for walks.
Scott, are you worried about your life? I just wonder, because our organization is I'm one of the co-founders, and we're really close to doing a lawsuit against Facebook, but we're kind of at the same time worried that maybe they'll try to just take us out. Are you worried about someone trying to kill you?
No.
Okay.
I don't walk with fear, man.
Wow, that's amazing. Marcos Monterio has his hand up. Go ahead.
Marcos is here. Here's the man.
What's up, Scott?
What's going on, Marcos? This is the hero, guys. This is your brain trust right here. You're looking at him. That's
Oh, no, I'm
that's
not
the
the hero,
brain.
man. You are, dude. You are, man.
So what's going
Scott,
on?
let me tell you, this guy's amazing. This guy's amazing. He put a big speaker in front of our voices, and he's basically saying what everybody in this community wants to say, and he's putting everything in the court. And we're very proud of this guy. We all back him up with everything he needs. I'm always here available for him 24/7. I told him that, and I tell it to everybody that I speak to you about, Scott. I mean, we're here to support you, man. Everything you need, everything you need. All right.
Yeah, bro.
And yeah, I mean, this thing is very unique. This situation is very unique. Lots of people have been trapped in this for the last 2 years. We sent over 50,000 letters to Congress. 50,000. They haven't done a thing. They haven't done a thing. Only
50,000?
50,000, yes.
Yeah.
Over 50,000 letters to Congress. Yes.
Marcos, you got the numbers. Correct me on the FOIA numbers. What were the FOIA numbers?
I think we sent somewhere around 400 FOIA requests, and only one FOIA response. Only one was, they gave us an email that we didn't ask.
Yep.
And it was basically, to me personally, it was a PR campaign.
Yeah.
It was like a PR campaign. It didn't help us much, but it basically put them in a position of being negligent instead of fraudulent, because they told us a story on the emails that they were investigating a fraud case with the companies and the CEOs, but they didn't give us any information that we asked, and they never answered our questions.
Right.
We've been asking since the first day, what is the share count, and they never gave us any share count. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just baffling that we were calling Congress every single day, all of us. We spoke to every Congress member, in the U.S., and nobody can help us.
Right.
Nobody.
Do you think, Marcus? Do you think it's because they're involved with it?
Well, I can't really say if they are or not. I mean, if you look at their tradings, something's not adding up, right? Because they're excellent traders, a lot of them, and I mean, way above average, right? And something's up, but we don't know. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we didn't get any help. I guess time answers that question, right? We've been here for 2 years and nothing was done. So,
right. Wow.
No, but
well,
there's a fellow on the West Coast, Alex Yan, who's been very helpful too. And he's been tracking the FOIA stuff in the FOIA filings. And what was interesting is when he got a response back from the SEC on one of his filings, they told him in searching for MMTLP that there was 636,000 documents that were responsive to his request. How is that possible?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, you're literally, that's a printing machine, a copier going like round the clock for like 2 centuries. I mean, and this is, they get away with it. So, that leaves us, and again, here we go. Here we are. So what do we do next? So the issue is sue, litigate, reform, act, educate, do everything that you're supposed to do. I mean, literally, we've got this great thing called the Constitution, which if we exploit it and use it properly, what it's designed for, it's for us to, at the very minimal, redress grievances in a peaceful manner. We've still got the courts open to us. We've got a possibility of a presidential election completely altering the political dynamic of the country by January of 2025. And at the very least, actually, one of the things that'll come out of my case, hopefully, will be that win, lose, or draw, the body of evidence we put together up here in Vermont gets handed off to the new U.S. Attorney General, in January, who I'm pretty sure President Trump would appoint almost immediately after he gets done firing Gary Gensler. The new DOJ chief comes in and we hand him the book of business and say, this is what went wrong. These are this is where it went bad. This is the fraud we know. This is the fraud you can prove. And guess what? You walk in and the U.S. Attorney's Office says, okay, pick up the phone, get my staff in here, write the subpoenas to the broker dealers. That goes out in 12 hours. 12 hours after that, the DOJ says, we've served the subpoenas on them. Subpoena Dukas take them is for all the documents. And they say, we want to see the blue sheets. So the blue sheets come in, their records come in, and the next thing you know, oh, I'm sorry, you guys screwed over the MMTLP people. We're just going to pull a 12K on you and shut you down. You shut down MMTLP, your brokerage is insolvent. Goodbye, you're done. 12K, tactical nuclear weapon just exploded in your accounting books. Bye-bye. That's the rosy scenario for me.
So
Knock
there's
them down. What's that?
There's a GG KOUL that's got a hand up, and also resolve MMTLP. Go ahead, resolve MMTLP, and then GG Cools next. Go ahead, resolve.
Thank you again for the mic. So Scott, you had mentioned before how you are not an attorney, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But I think this question will resonate for a lot of people, even those that are not familiar with the situation that we're in.
Right.
If you had nothing to hide and did no wrong, would you withhold information?
Yeah. But I'm saying I'd say yeah, not from a good guy standpoint. I'd say yeah from a nefarious standpoint. You got to understand the mentality, if not the psychology, that is woven into the DNA of our adversaries in this situation. They cannot allow the little guy, the small American, John Q. Public, patriotic, tax-paying individual to prevail over them on any circumstance. They got stung in GameStop. They got stung in the AMC rally in June of 21. They cannot allow the little guy to win because that invalidates their entire psychological makeup. This is not a game that's being played for economics. This is a game that's being played by people that have had, they're accustomed to winning because the deck has always been stacked in their favor. They're not used to the peasants having their pitchforks and torches go into U.S. district courthouses and playing Smash Mouth. And that's basically what's going on up here. So realistically, it's a psychological thing. We get a psychological victory over them by getting into the next round. They're going to have some problems, and they know that. That's why they have that's why they're doing the press.
GG Cool, go ahead with your question. Thank you.
Hey everybody. Hey Scott. Again, thanks for all you're doing. A big couple things about the FOIAs. The first thing regarding the FOIAs, the responses you're getting back now is they're putting it on the complex track, and it's going to take 3 years for them to start even reviewing it. So that's what's happening to two of mine right now.
Right.
So I'm past the it's under investigation. I'm now part of the complex track. So it's kind of crazy, yeah. But I have 120,000 pieces of documents on my FOIA that's part of the complex track. So I'm working through that now. Next thing about reaching out to FINRA, people are forgetting FINRA put a buzzman named Jack Chase who doesn't exist. So that's what they've done to the community. They've disregarded our voice and put us off to some fake guy and just laughed us off to this Jack Chase guy who does not exist at FINRA. It's absolutely a shame what they've done to the retail community here, and we all applaud Scott for standing up and being our loud voice in this matter. So thank us again, Scott.
Thank you.
That was a nice feedback there, and GG Cool and Marcus and all these newcomers that are on Red America First. Make no mistake, our team is exposing corruption everywhere. We're trying to wake up Americans every single week. Copy and paste will tell you we've been doing this for 3 years as of last week. There's a couple more people that want to chime in. Black Box Socks was trying and he put his hand down. Drew Loves. I'm gonna try to ping Drew Loves, and then Murdoch. Please try to hit unmute on your side. And copy and paste. I don't know if Drew loves Rich, but he's not unmuting.
Drew Loves Rich is probably a troll.
Yep.
Can you hear me? This is Marduk.
What's up, Marduk? Talk to us.
Hey guys, thanks for the call. Scott, thanks for everything you're working on. Marcos, you're an absolute G. Scott, just a question. I'm just kind of throwing it out there for, kind of talking point. So in the response to the open letter, FINRA stated that they could not obtain such information of the consolidated count of shares, yet their website has a rule 4140 that allows them the authority to perform an independent share audit at any time. What are your opinions on that rule and why they haven't exercised it yet?
Well, they literally, I mean, like Robert Cook basically said, he can't do anything, which is it's just nonsense. So once you tell one lie, you're in for a penny, in for a pound, because that was the big lie. We can't do anything. So that star shells into other different areas. I mean, literally. So we can't keep track of short positions. Let's just shift off Cook and his letter and just look at Sam Drady's affidavit in the Corsani case, which they recycled in my case. Sam Drady says we can't keep track of short positions closed out, and we can't keep track of short shares or naked synthetics. But the parallel to that is in 4560. I mean, excuse me, in Rule 203 SHO. They're supposed to keep track of the naked synthetics because they're allowing the market makers to make them up. So they're voiding the regulatory capacity at every juncture, not just Robert Cook with what he's doing. I mean, literally, Drady's under oath saying, well, we don't track that. Of course they do. They should be able to. And if they don't, then there's no reason to have the other regulations. And then per the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010, Dodd-Frank said you are to take every way that you can remove the possibility of market manipulation, you have to remove it. You can't allow it. You must have standards and protocols that say market manipulation will be addressed. Remember, Dodd-Frank came in 2010, right after 2008's crash. So that regulation, that preamble with Dodd-Frank was literally eviscerated as soon as they went to show 203 and said, oh, you can naked synthetic your way all the way to the moon and back, and you don't even have to account for them. Just trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. I'm going to try and do a locate on 20 million shares I just created with a keystroke in a company that's only got a 50 million share float. Tell me how those numbers add up. This is what we're up against. We're up against a corruption which is so intrinsic in the U.S. stock exchange. It literally it makes Bernie Madoff's schemes like look like quaint little parties out in the park. Literally, that's what we're up against.
There's a Marcus Marcus Monterio wants to come back in. There's also Murdoch buy stakes. Go ahead, Murdoch buy stakes.
That's a troll.
Okay, that's a troll. Let me kick him out. Hang on. All right, Marcus, go ahead.
Just a quick one. Somebody sent me in a message here saying that the amount of documents that they accumulated, which is 636,000 pages, is taller than a 20-story building. That's for visuals.
That's a visual you can't unsee right there. It kind of makes it looking like let me do my tax forms. They're only 60 pages. What a walk in the park.
Yeah. And I wanted to make a quick comment here because Scott did a shout out to me in the beginning. I did some numbers for the they have this when they halted us, when they halted MMTLP, there is this committee that is like a high-level committee from FINRA that only very high-skilled specialists from the market work at this committee. And people that have like 20 years of industry experience, very selected group. And when they halted us, they put on that they issue a document. It's called the UPC notice. And when they issued that document, there was a very interesting language in that document. And it always made me very intrigued about it, because it didn't seem to be a language that would come from a very high skilled team of people that, see very complex contracts every day. And it read something like, when they halted, they said, we're going to halt you, but the halt is going to end concurrent with the deletion of the ticker. But before that, they said there was an extraordinary event, of settlement, of the settlement process. There was a big issue about it. And once they halted, nothing moves. But once you delete it, you basically erase everything that happened. So they never resolved the underlying issue. And I was very confused by that decision. And I started to research all of the history from the UPC committee. Since FINRA became FINRA, because FINRA, before being named FINRA, it was NAST for more than 70 years. And then in, I believe in 2007.
I could check in, come right back. Okay.
And then in 2007, NAST became FINRA. So I started to analyze all the UPC notices from 2007 to 2024, everything. And I analyzed a total of 1,040 UPC notices. And I was able to spot 25 notices in the entire history of FINRA solely about trading halts. So they're very similar to a notice, but the problem is every other notice that they issued in the past, they all had a mechanism to resume trading and resolve the underlying issue. Our notice, it is the only notice in the entire history in more than 20 years that they don't address the underlying issue. They simply halted and deleted and left us in the limbo indefinitely. So, and nobody wants to look at this thing. And we know, they know what they're doing. And we know that the SEC knows what they're doing. And the SEC is their oversight and they don't want to do anything. So it's, I mean, for the layman, it's not easy to spot this, but once you study it and you understand it, it's right in front of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, literally, when you get you get down to the ugly truth, we have a corporate oligarchy running the economy and literally running the country. So it's basically you have a corporate oligarchy cosplaying as a democracy. That's what's going on. Until we fix it, and we can fix it. None of us would be here if we didn't have any hope. That's my take on things. So we need to fix it. Everybody needs to roll their shirt sleeves up and get down to work. Everybody, there's a famous quote from a preacher that I kind of think it's one of the most important things I've ever heard. He says, do what you can with what you got where you are. In other words, get into the fight, swing into the battle, no matter what you can do, no matter what role, whatever happened in your past is your past. And what you've got to do is you got to get into the fight now. And this is, look, we're not just fighting to get reimbursement. We're fighting for the next generation here. I mean, this is country restoring activities we're involved with.
For sure.
Andrew, go ahead.
So just a few things to touch.
Andrew wanted to say something.
Yeah, just a few things to touch up on what Marcos and Scott were just discussing. The Uniform Practices Code Committee, the committee responsible for the U3 halts. What's really interesting is that it's entirely made up of representatives from either large Wall Street entities or brokerages. But yet FINRA claims that no brokerages had any advance notice that the halt was coming. It is absolutely impossible for that to be the case just from the makeup of the UPC committee. Similarly, I try to look at things very objectively here. And the fact is that ever since this halt was put on this security, every bit of information that FINRA has released when they chose to release it, was proven wrong in some form or fashion. For example, FINRA states that there's 2.65 million shares that are currently short this company. However, a week later, the company came out and stated that representatives of short sellers had actually approached them about one representative for one short seller approached them about buying many multiples of the shares that FINRA claimed was short. When you top that off with the fact that there have been countless requests from congressional representatives for a share audit, a member of FINRA's own market regulation advisory panel demanded a share audit, and yet FINRA has refused to give us one. So even somebody looking at this situation completely objectively outside of the investor pool would realize that at the very minimum here, what we are due is transparency. We are supposed to have the most fundamentally free and fair market in the world. A share count is literally the most basic form of transparency that you could ask for. And not only have they fought tooth and nail against giving it to us, but they have fought every single legal effort that was simply calling on them to provide that audit, which is why you're seeing them fight Scott with, they're throwing every attorney, I'm thinking they're throwing a gaggle of attorneys at Scott, something we haven't seen yet before in a situation, in this situation. So again, all kudos to Scott, and hopefully we can get some of this transparency that we're looking for here. And I have even, Scott has even suggested, if there are people in other jurisdictions that wanted to file a complaint similarly to his, that he would be willing to assist. I encourage it, because thus far, out of all the legal efforts that I've seen, this man right here, he's the man. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. Once again, thank you for having this podcast, and Scott, thank you for sitting here and doing it.
Thank you. Yeah. The biggest hurdle we got to get over is we got to get by arbitration and the motions to dismiss, and that's why we're challenging the constitutionality of FINRA. That's their, I think that's their Achilles heel, excuse me. I think the constitutional arguments are sound. The question is, in 2024, is a federal jurist going to want to come down and say, yeah, I'm going to blow away a federal SRO that's got 4,200 employees that's regulating the market in a moment of great financial stress in the world. We're going to take them apart, blow one active unit into the SEC, have the SEC absorb their duties, retrain people, swear people as officers, and go down that road. So the constitutional arguments may be sound, but the practical arguments may be difficult. I mean, that's the problem they're going to have. The judge is going to have to deal with that. So again, we just got to get over these first hurdles.
And Marcus and everybody that's kind of new, there's also Sway, copy and paste. So I don't know if Sway's good or not.
Sway's good.
Sway's good.
Okay, Sway, let's hear from you. But I want everyone to know that our team, Red America First, we've been fighting corruption. We've been waking up Americans for 3 years. And we would love for you guys to tune in. We do it every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. So we'd love you guys to be a part of that. But go ahead, Sway.
Hi, it's Sway. Scott, man, you've really given our community just, I think that everybody has been reinvigorated to keep working, or if they've taken a break, to start up again. I'm in Nevada. I don't really think it's going to be one of the best places to file. I'm curious.
I used to live in Winnemucca.
So yeah, you know the area, and I want to get going again.
Well,
I'm wondering about the cost and, in terms of timing, is sooner better?
Well, let's see what happens in my case. If I get over the hurdle in arbitration, then you guys have got something to work with. At this point, I haven't won anything. All I've done is pick a fight and raise constitutional issues. But the issues are there and they're sound, and I think we've got the best shot we've had to get over these hurdles. You see, once litigation begins, the opposing side wants to take you out of the game by saying you haven't stated a claim. This is legitimate federal procedural stuff. There's nothing out of the ordinary with what they're doing. It's just that we're in the iron triangle because we're small investors. We have to fight to get out of arbitration. We have to fight that we don't have the advantages of RICO on our side for the most part, though I'm making a constitutional argument that I should. I mean, they've raised it that I can't state a RICO claim. Technically, I really can't. But I'm raising the fact that I claimed a RICO claim so that I can raise it as a constitutional issue. So literally, the time to file is not now. But if I get over this hurdle, whatever ruling the judge uses that says, okay, this is why Scott Traudt can keep going, that's when you can file, because then you just mirror what she did in the Nevada Federal District Court or any federal district courts in the United States, because this is going to be of the 4 cases that have been filed before, they weren't of the same, they involved MMTLP, but it didn't raise the issues that I have. So you'll be in, I guess you could say, you got to be in a holding pattern until we see how they rule here. So that's the best advice I could give you. And that's not legal advice. It's just sound, practical advice. See what they say, then move on.
Yeah, I guess it might be nice to have some of us just ready to go once we get the clear.
Well, we can't be ready until, the judge rules.
Yeah.
And listen, this could get way out of hand too. So let's say the judge goes for the nuclear option on FINRA and says, yeah, I agree. They're acting exactly like the British, crown companies that their whole revolution was more or less started over. And it's an unretractable, uncorrallable exercise of it's an exercise of delegation, which shouldn't exist. Then what we do is use that ruling, then you sculpt your lawsuit to say boom. But once FINRA's knocked down here, they're not a target anymore. So they're out of the way. Literally, does that mean that their duties now devolve to the SEC? Is there a vacuum? Is there a gap period? I don't know. I just know that if I get over the arbitration, the motions to dismiss, and especially on FINRA on the constitutional arguments, we're in a different world. So the best thing that we can do now is just wait, because just see, if I get pounded, I get pounded. If I don't get pounded and I get in through the mail slot, then everybody's set to put their track shoes on and start running. It's the best I can tell you.
Well, we're rooting for you, and we really appreciate this platform. Thanks for doing this, Ashley. And
yeah, Ashley, this is nice.
I look forward to connecting with some other people in Nevada.
Those that are listening, please write this number down. It's area code 407-819-4910. I want you guys to all be connected with me, because we will help Scott Megeso's in Hawaii. I think he's still unmuted, but we're grassroots organization. We are fighting corruption. We are fighting all the lies, even the COVID scandal. Sorry for those that are tuning in and took that fake poisonous vaccine, but we will help, and we won't stop fighting. There's other people that want to tune in though.
All right, Ashley, I'm gonna have to knock this off. I've got to get that. I got to get a brief in tomorrow by midnight. So how about we make this the last one so I can get some sleep, because I got to be up at 4 o'clock writing.
Okay, Rosemarie, she's our editor with the newsletter, the Red America First monthly newsletter. We're gonna ask her to ask the last question, but before Rosemarie, real quick, Scott, would you come back to Red America First?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
thank you for having me. This has been very gracious of you guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate you giving a microphone to the rest of the MMTLP crew here. Thank you very much.
I kind of want to redo the interview, because
one, I wasn't home. I had an emergency trip with my work, and when I'm home, I have more control of the show, and when I'm remote, there's so many risks. Like my schedule's fluid, and I had to use a friend's company's internet, and he stayed a little extra longer so I could host a show in his company, but his company's router was blocking streaming capabilities, so I couldn't stream, I couldn't go on Facebook Live, nothing. So I would be honored to have you come back. Go ahead, Rosemary, with your question. Thank you.
It's not a question, but it is a reminder. First of all, Scott, thank you immensely for all of the information and time you dedicated to us tonight. But I want to remind everybody to look at the newsletters when you get them, and also to please send them to your family, friends, and so forth. We need to network as much as possible in order to get the word out, not only for Red America First, but for our presidential candidate. You'll see wonderful, wonderful information, and it's very enjoyable to read. So please do look at the newsletter. A lot of work goes into it, and we do want to spread it out, because you will find facts in there about what is going on in this campaign that you will not find anywhere else. So I thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
And to that point, Scott, our organization has been hit just probably like all you guys have, with censorship, unfairness on the big tech, being put in the shadow ban.
Oh, no, Ashley, have you taken a look at that? When you get done, or you have time tomorrow, go look at that Daily Wire lawsuit against the Department of State. You guys might be being targeted by DOS.
Okay.
Seriously, I would contact those cats that are involved in that lawsuit and find out if your name showed up on it.
Okay. I'll have to copy paste about it, because I'm not familiar.
Yep.
Daily Wire,
Daily Wire versus Department of State. It's a Texas case, I think, or Louisiana.
Okay, perfect. Well, we appreciate you, Scott, and we're definitely going to have you come back on in the future. God bless all your efforts that you're doing, and we are all, especially Red America First, our corruption department's going to reach out and try to see how we can help you get this all behind you and exposed, call them out by names with receipts. And really, if Congress is involved, this entire system, the American people are getting played, right? We're getting played by the medical industry, by the financial institutions, the stock market. I'm going long-winded here, but we're all sick and tired, and I think we're all aligned. So we just need to work together, and that's kind of like my last statement here. We're going to have you come back for sure, Scott. Thank you.
Gotcha. Well, good night, guys. Thank you for having me.
Wow, what a amazing episode tonight with Scott Traudt, and he's spearheading a lot of the shenanigans going on against everybody and the MMTLP. Let's see who else wants to chime in real quick about this. Marcus, what did you think about tonight so far?
Marcos, I'm gonna sign off now, guys. I gotta go get some sleep, man.
All right, brother. If you
Ciao.
need any help, let me know.
I will, man. Have a good night, man.
You too.
Marcus, are you an attorney?
No, I'm not.
What do you do?
I'm an entrepreneur. I have a company, and I self-employed. I work for myself.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks for coming on. How did you hear about us? Was it like a social media post or?
Yeah, I saw on Twitter that Scott was coming to, talk to you guys, and thought it was interesting. So yeah, I'm here. We've been in this journey for almost 2 years now. So everybody knows each other. It's a big group of people, hundreds of people on Twitter, and we're very active every day. People are posting stuff online. I just wanted to make a quick comment for the record that somebody shared with me. The records, they estimate that we're looking at 48 boxes of records, and that's just to review the documents. It's going to be 192 to 384 hours, and it's 2,500 pages per box. That's the amount of documents that the SEC is holding about MMTLP. So, yeah, and they don't give us anything. They don't give us anything. And
Wow.
yeah, and they can confirm or deny they have an investigation. They actually did say they have an investigation on MMTLP right now going on, but they can't say anything. If you call the FOIA department, they can't say anything. They have to, they can't confirm or deny, and it is what it is. I mean, they can investigate this indefinitely, basically.
Wow.
And keep us trapped. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate very much. I gotta hop off as well. I have to take care of my stuff here. But thank you so much for the space. Thank you so much for the interview with Scott. He knows a lot. He's a forefront warrior in this fight for us, and we're here to support him. We're here to support every community member that does this kind of stuff, because it's not easy. It's not easy to anyone. It takes a toll on your life, your personal life with your family and everybody, because you have to be really invested in this fight, because it doesn't, nobody's giving you anything. Nobody. I mean, as I said, we spoke to Congress every single day, called multiple offices. They all received us and said they were going to help us, but nothing has happened. I mean, nothing major, nothing like that would change our situation. But it is what it is. We got to go to courts. Wow. And yeah.
Well, thank you for coming, and please consider coming every week. We're exposing many things besides just the stock market, also medical and the politicians and everything else. So thank you for coming tonight, for sure.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
So we're going to transition now to the intel round, where we go state to state, sharing what transpired from last week to this week. And real quick, we're going to start with Megeso in Hawaii. Megeso, you're in the trifecta state. Any updates in Hawaii? And let's get the intel round going. Thank you so much. Again, thank you.
Yeah, pretty much here in Hawaii for me, it's been getting online with solid internet without dropping off every few seconds. So we seem to accomplish that. Tyranny still continues here, whether it's monkeypox or any other virus or COVID. We're preparing lockdowns and things that are going to come, because we see what's happening in California and other places. And so my goal right now is to get a studio set up and keep broadcasting out with Red America First on all the corruption that's taking place. And our elections are coming up soon. We got the same politicians that committed the crimes against humanity still on board to be reselected, if you would. As you know, Hawaii is probably one of the deepest blue states there is, and we're ready for them to throw the kitchen sink at us, because we are getting close to home in this spiritual war of good versus evil. And that's why I ask everyone, any evil or any corruption, anything you're seeing out there, bring it to the forefront. And if you don't want to bring it to yourself in the forefront with it, bring it to us. We'll help you where we can. Just bring in the receipts for everything that you have, and look forward to working with everybody. Anybody else is unmuted, I think it would be okay to step in at this time.